She's my bestie, that's my bestie. Your pair of eyes had me paralyzed. Toxic nigga, but you made me to a better guy. Smoke, but with you on forever, ever. I can watch you all day, girl, like you're televised. You think like this nigga, they ain't never lied. I left the bitches alone, I had to pick a side. Look in your eyes, girl, you were hypnotized. Of course, it was your breasts, hips, and them damn thighs. Close my eyes, I'm still mesmerized. Trying to get mad at my bestie, I tried. That's my bestie, yeah, my pretty.
I heard she's the one, she's got it going on. That's my pretty eyes, baby. Yeah, yeah. She don't take no mess. My bestie is the best. That's my pretty eyes, baby. Yeah, yeah. I heard she's the one, she's got it going on. That's my pretty eyes, baby. Yeah, yeah. She don't take no mess. My bestie is the best. That's my pretty eyes, baby. Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Hey, Cold Pepsi, how are you? Are you ready for this? At least it's not Jen McCabe anymore. But we have a new one. We have Carrieroberts. She is also the girl that went with Karen to find John O'Keefe the fateful morning of. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Actually, a little bit different than Jen McCabe. She doesn't seem as vindictive and, off-putting as Jen, but hey, you never know. So we'll watch her testimony, and then also, I'm doing great, thank you. And then also, we are going to hear from the Sullivan sisters. They are the two sisters that John and Karen went on a vacation with, and one of the sisters, Karen, thought she seen John kissing. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And they're kind of off-putting, but hey, it's whatever. So let's get started. Here we go. Woohoo!
Thank you. Please be seated. Quarterback.
Wait, damn it.
All right, so jurors, I wait. Waited until the last witness left the stand and until you all had your morning break to give you one other instruction. And this one, all the instructions are important, but this one's important, so I want you to focus on it. Now, you heard from the last witness, and you may hear from other witnesses who described what Ms. McCabe called harassment and public demonstration. I believe she referred to a rolling rally. I permitted that testimony for a very limited purpose. That testimony was not offered, nor may you consider it as evidence that Ms. Reed has bad character or propensity to commit crime. In fact, there's no evidence before you that the defendant is responsible for that conduct that was described by Ms. McCabe. The evidence is relevant only insofar as it goes to the witnesses or to explain the witness's state of mind. So Ms. McCabe's state of mind, and that is to the extent it explains Ms. McCabe's conduct or statements or actions at any particular time. And ultimately, the testimony may be used by you only as it goes to the witness's credibility. Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Lally, your next witness, please.
Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'll call Ms. Carrieroberts to the stand.
Okay.
Hey, Daniel. Yeah, Cold Pepsi. Okay, before we get into Brian Higgins' testimony, let me give you a rundown about the Sullivan sisters. The reason why Karen even started texting Brian Higgins and, basically, getting her emotions met. She felt like she was unwanted and, he made her feel wanted for the time being. She got her emotions met and she done away with them. They were sending flirty texts, whatever, because she thought she seen John kissing another girl and was no longer attracted to her. She wanted to know that her options were still open. But she had stopped texting Brian Higgins 2 weeks before John was unalived. Brian Higgins was also in the bar. He was the one that Brian Albert was playing grab ass, if you ask Matt McCabe with. But he is also one of the ones that, you know, may have a reason to, you know, do something other than, you know, Karen running over John O'Keefe with her car, because that never happened. You can't tell me that happened. There's no way. There's no way you can tell me that happened. Looking at her car and then knowing the injuries that he had, no, there's no way. But anyways, let's get into it.
Commissioner, you solemnly swear the evidence given the court during the case against the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. You take the seat.
All right, Mr. Lilly. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Carrieroberts, Roberts.
And where do you live, ma'am?
Canton, Mass.
How long have you lived in Canton?
10 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Canton?
My husband, my 2 children.
And your 2 children, how old are they? And boy, girl,
My son is 12, my daughter's 14.
and do you work, ma'am?
I do.
What do you do?
I'm an executive assistant.
How long have you been doing
17 years.
that? And your husband, Kurt, does he work as well?
Yes.
What does he do for?
He's a heavy equipment operator.
And how long has he been doing that?
Maybe 20 plus years.
Now, if I could turn your attention to the evening of January 28th, 2022 into the morning of the 29th. Do you recall those dates? And do you recall what days of the week they were?
Say it again.
Do you recall what days of the week they were?
Friday,
So 28th
Friday the 28th,
into a
Saturday the 29th.
Now, on the evening of the 28th, do you recall what you were doing that evening?
I was bowling with my daughter and her friends and one of the mothers.
And do you recall where that was?
Westgate Lanes in Brockton.
And about what time was it that you got home from that?
Probably about 8:30ish, because there was a storm coming, so we wanted to be home. I didn't want to be out late.
And when you got home, you and your daughter, is that correct?
Say that one more time.
You and your daughter came home around 8:30 or so?
Yes.
Who, if anyone else from your house, was home when you got home?
I think my husband was home. He was going out. I think I passed him, and he was heading out to meet his friends. My son was not home.
And who were the friends that he was going out to meet?
John O'Keefe and Michael Camerano.
So, Ms. Roberts, I'd like to...
Now, the one thing I will say about Carrie, at least she shows some emotion. Whereas Jen tried to, but at least Carrie shows some real emotion. Like, she ain't trying to put on an act. It's there. You know what I mean? That's what I will give about Carrie Roberts.
Start with just Mr. Camerano. How do you know?
He's been childhood friends with my husband.
And do you know where your husband was going to meet Mr. Camerano and Mr. O'Keefe?
Miss at McCarthy's. It's a bar in Canton.
Sort of in the center of town, is that right?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Keefe, how do you know?
I've known him since high school.
And where did you go to high school?
Braintree High School.
And how is it that you came to know Mr. O'Keefe? How would you describe your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
He was one of my closest friends.
In addition to John O'Keefe, through growing up and going to Braintree High, were you familiar with any other members of the O'Keefe family?
Yes, Kristen, his sister, was a senior when I was a freshman. John was a year older than me, and Paul was 2 years younger than me. So at some point, I was in school with all of them.
And after high school, at some point, did you come to know any of the members of the O'Keefe family while you were living in camp?
Yes, my son and John's nephew went to an in-home daycare together. So I went to go pick up my son at one point, and Kristen was there, and we figured out that we lived in the same neighborhood that we were going to be moving into. And then Kristen got sick.
And during that time, sort of when you first reconnected with Kristen, about how old was your son and her son?
My son was 18 months. He's almost a year older.
And your son and Patrick Furbush, did they end up going to the same school again?
Yes, they went to home daycare. They went to preschool, pre-K. And by the time they got to elementary school, they got separated because they were troublemakers.
But did they go to the same school all throughout?
Yes.
Darn
What
those
any other
little
activities did your son
troublemakers.
do along with Kristen's son, Patrick?
Well, Patrick wanted to try hockey. So they did hockey together, and then he didn't like that. And they played baseball together since they were T-ball, like 4 or 5.
Now, you mentioned that Kristen O'Keefe, or Kristen Furbush at that point, at some point after you met her, she got sick, is that right?
Correct.
Eventually she passed away, is that right?
Correct.
After she passed away, her husband also passed away.
Correct.
And at some point after that, what, if any, role did John O'Keefe have with reference to this?
Well, when Kristen passed away, I was in touch with John, just seeing if they needed help with the kids, getting them to and from wherever, because I was down the street. Kristen passed away. And then he said, I might move in. Steve's got to figure out finances, but I might move into your neighborhood. And I said, oh, okay. And then when Steve died, John did move in and he took over raising the kids.
And fair to say that you were, with reference to your son being friends with his nephew Patrick, you would see him fairly often, and by him I mean John O'Keefe.
Oh, yes, daily.
And what, if any, at some point did John and his niece and nephew move from down the street from your house?
Yes, they moved across town. So I live on the Milton side. He moved over sort of near the Stoughton side.
About how far a drive is that sort of from your house to where you moved to? It was on Meadowtown, correct?
Yes, it depends because Canton's terrible for traffic. Maybe 7 minutes, maybe 8, depending. And if it's in the evening, it's longer.
And after Mr. O'Keefe and his niece and his nephew moved sort of across town, where did his nephew Patrick, where did he go to school at?
He remained at the same school that he was at with my son. So on Wednesdays, when John couldn't grab him in time because he'd be working in the city, Patrick would come home with me.
You familiar with what Mr. O'Keefe did for a living?
He was a Boston police officer, but at the time he was working in an office registering sex offenders.
And you would help out as far as picking up his son. What, if any, assistance did you have with regard to his niece Kaylee as well?
Say that one more time.
What, if any, assistance did you have with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his schedule with regard to his niece Kaylee as well?
I didn't take care of Kaylee as much. That was sort of, there was other women, Jen McCabe, one of them, she sort of really took hold of caring for Kaylee because her daughter was friends with Kaylee, and I sort of got Patrick. So
Yes,
John
Lily, you have to keep your voice up. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry.
And if you could keep your voice up too, okay?
My apologies. And then, through
Yeah,
your,
well,
through
like,
the years
your
that
voice
you knew
up,
Mr. O'Keefe
so we
when you
can
lived in
hear you.
Canton and your time being friends with him, what, if any, conversations would you have with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to any sort of relationships or dating or anything like that?
Well, he dated a lot of people.
But
So
as
it
far as
depends.
Your conversations with what, if any, sort of role would you have, or what if any, knowledge did you have in reference to people that you date?
My husband, whenever he would go on a date with somebody, he would have my husband come meet them, sort of say, like, what do you think? And he had a couple of girlfriends that were very nice.
Now, at some point, did you become aware of a person by the name Karen?
Yes.
And when was it, and how was it that you first came to know that person?
John called me and said,
Wow, the look over that she just gave over to the defense. Wild. Anyways, okay.
Karen and I are going to stop by because we had people over. And I said, who is Karen? Because I didn't know if he was going to bring someone from high school and surprise me with a random, I had never heard of her. And he said, you know who Karen is? The girl I'm dating. I said, nope, but okay. And then they came over that night.
And do you recall when about that was?
I think it was sometime in July.
In July, what year?
What are we, 2020?
Sometime shortly after sort of the COVID pandemic.
Yes.
How would you describe your relationship, if any, with Karen?
She was like another person that took care of the kids. She took care of Kaylee and Patrick a lot. So I would coordinate with her if Ryan and Patrick would.
See, she doesn't want to say like she looked at her as a glorified babysitter, like Jen said. She was another person that just took care of the kids, you know, not that they were in a relationship, you know, they loved each other, nothing like that, you know.
We're going to go to the golfing range, or if Ryan was going to go with them to the Red Sox game, that kind of thing. We weren't do lunch or hang out like girlfriends.
Was there any occasions where you had socialization or go out as couples or anything like that with Ms. O'Keefe?
No, they came over our house one time, and then we'd do baseball tournaments down the Cape, and we'd all get together. But the four of us never went out.
And just for clarity,
In other words, she did not like Karen. In other words, she was like, oh, that's another girlfriend that you've dated, and I'm not going to get too close to her because you break up every time I get close to somebody. That's the way I take it. That's really the way I take it. Like, she ain't trying to get close. She was never trying to get close. Because John, I guess, was a playboy. And hey, that's all right. He could be a playboy. Let him do that, you know? But when he gets serious with the girl and is dating her for 2 years, you know, and stuff, you could be a little more friendly to her, but damn, you just look at her as another babysitter.
purposes, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
Yep.
Identify her as where
Ooh, that look she gave her. Oh,
Say that again.
Could you identify as where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She is seated at that front table, and she has a black and white suit jacket.
and Karen is giving her the fucking look. Like, oh, are you going to lie on me too, bitch?
Can I just pass the record reflected identification by the witness?
Yes.
Now, coming back to that evening of the 28th, your husband went out to meet Mr. Camerano and Mr. Lee, correct?
Yes.
Did you know about what time it was that your husband incurred rides home that night?
Maybe around 10:30.
And after you arrived home, what, if anything,
Right.
specifically do you recall the two of you doing or anything before going off set?
I remember sitting on the couch and the front door was right there and it was open and it
No,
started.
I really think like all these women were jealous that she was a single woman. She had her own house, own car, didn't have kids. You know, I mean, she was successful in her life. And I feel like maybe these women feel like they're not so successful in life. You know, I mean, John also had his own house, cars, and everything, and you know, was successful in life, and he took on 2 kids. I really think they're all jealous. They were jealous of how successful John and Karen both were in their own lives. No kids, nothing. The only reason why John's got kids is because he found it in his heart to freaking adopt his sister's kids. So his parents wouldn't have to do it, you know, trying to, you know, ease the burden off his parents. And John wouldn't have all these babysitters, as she claims, if, you know, maybe the parents stepped in, maybe the brothers stepped in. I mean, they just act like it was John's burden, you know, and only his burden. No, you should all pitch in, you know. I mean, did his mom work? I don't know if his mom worked or anything. I'm not saying too much about his dad because his dad would do stuff and all that great. So he would come over and watch the kids and when John needed them. But I don't hear too much about the mom, you know. But that's just the stories, you know, I've heard. So, I mean, and that's just from the text messages between Karen and John. Saying that my dad's over there watching him, you know, type stuff. So this is crazy.
Started to snow. It had just started to come down probably about midnight, but it was coming down fast. So you knew it was a little snow.
Girl, it was not coming down fast. I know that the Commonwealth wants you to fucking lie for them, but girl, stop. It wasn't coming down fast. Coming down fast is you're getting fucking an inch per minute. God, I gotta quit swearing. You're getting an inch per minute. Per hour. Right? You're getting an inch per hour. That's coming down fast. That's like whiteout conditions. I mean, that's record snowfall. You had 3 to 5 inches from 12 all the way to 6 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I guess maybe it was pretty good, but it still wasn't like whiteout conditions. We seen the police dash cams. You can't tell us that it was whiteout conditions and it was so horrible.
Snowflakes usually mean a big snowstorm. And I said, well, it's starting. So we went to bed because we knew.
Since when do little snowflakes mean a big snowstorm? Oh, shoot. Okay. Anyways. All right. Now she's a meteorologist. Okay. Cool.
We weren't going out anywhere.
And as far as turning your attention to the next morning, at some point you awoke. Do you recall what it was that awoke you that morning on the 29th?
Karen called me at 5 o'clock in the morning.
And is that sort of a normal occurrence as far as Ms. Reed calling you and specifically calling you that early?
No.
And when you went to answer the phone, at some point did you look at sort of like the screen to your phone?
I don't know. I just answered it.
In a different way. As far as at some point, did you realize or did you know whether or not that call that at some point you answered correct?
Yes.
And you called
Oh my
and answered,
God.
you know whether or not that was the first call Ms. Reed had placed you that morning?
She just answered.
It was
and
the second call only from looking at my phone after because I said, oh, shoot, she called me. She just called and I didn't. She called twice.
And the phone call that you answered, what time was that?
5 on the dot.
And if you know I'm looking at your phone, the phone call that you didn't wake up or didn't answer, do you know how long before that phone call was?
I think it was a minute or two before.
So 5 o'clock on the dot, you get a phone call, you answer it, and it's Ms. Reed, is that right?
Correct.
And that phone number, you had her sort of programmed into your phone as a contact, is that correct?
Yes.
And on prior occasions, had you called that number or gotten a call from that number on prior occasions?
Yes.
And when you got that call or made that call, who was the other person on the end that you received?
Say that again?
maybe a pretty simple question as far as it goes, but just with reference to any prior phone calls that you either got or received with that number that you programmed in as Karen Read, when you spoke to someone by calling or receiving a call from that contact, who was on the other end of the call?
Karen Read.
So you answered.
I would give Lally the same look. Like, your question doesn't make any sense. She knows Karen Read was on the line. Whether she cares whose damn number was on the line, she knows that Karen Read was on the line. My goodness.
Time right around 5 a.m. and you described to the jury sort of what the content of that conversation was.
I answered the phone and she said, John's dead. Carrie. And then she hung up.
Are you sure she said John's dead? Are you sure? I don't know. I think Jen like put shit in your head. I really do. I think she says, oh, well, you should tell him that, John's dead beforehand. So it makes it look good because, you're, and it ain't really Jen that's getting into your head. It's actually Peggy O'Keefe that is. Because she's the one that told you it's Karen's fault because she left him there. A grown adult that wanted to freaking go to a house. So Karen dropped him off there. She waited to make sure that they were okay to go inside. He didn't come out in 10 minutes. She left. But somehow you guys concocted this story. I don't believe that she said John's dead. Maybe she said, what if he's dead? What if something happened to him? Stuff like that. But I don't know. And all this Carrie, and this Jen. It just, okay, when did we rehearse or when did we write this script? When the mom told you to do a timeline together? Or did she mean to write a script together? Because she don't care what happened to her son. She wants Karen to be responsible because she left him there. It's her fault, right? It's all her fault. John wasn't an adult and could do what the hell he wanted. It's Karen's fault, right? Jeez.
And as far as her in the conversation, did you say anything or get a chance to say anything before she hung up?
No.
And when she's speaking to you and saying those words to you over the phone, how loudly is she saying those words?
Very loud. She woke my husband, who was sleeping.
By the time that the phone rings, you
And I thought she told you that she thought that John got hit by a plow. But weren't you the one calling the cops and we're all nice and like you guys were good buddies and shit? Like, oh, I'm just making sure because, because you guys were talking about the whole snow or the blizzard party and how he didn't go and blah, 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 blah. The cop did. So tell me again. Okay. Carrie, I was trying to like give you the slack. I really am because I think out of everybody, you're the most one telling the truth. But this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy.
About your husband sleeping, correct?
Yes.
And then afterwards, he's what?
Correct.
Now, what happened then?
Then I got out of bed and Kurt said, what was that? I said, I don't know. Something's happening. And I think I started getting dressed at that point because I don't know if I started getting dressed at that point or after she called back again. I tried to call her, I think a couple times back to be like, what is going on? Finally, she called me back again and she said, I'm afraid John might be dead. He might have gotten hit by a plow. He did not come home last night. I was not supposed to stay in Kansas.
I just see, it's just, I don't know.
Last night, and he would never leave Kaylee alone. I think something happened.
Okay, I could believe the whole, he would never leave Kaylee alone. I could understand that part. I believe that part. I believe you're telling the truth, that part. But when we get to the 911 call, when you called the cop, you're the one saying, oh, well, she's worried about him. We don't know if you said, we don't know if he got hit by a plow or if he's in jail or something. So who was the plow story? Because I really sneakingly suspicion that you all were gonna blame this on the plow. And tell the mom said, I blame, it's Karen's fault. She shouldn't have left him, right? If she'd never said that, it would have never, I don't think this would have evolved into what it evolved into. Lord.
You recall earlier in the day of the 28th having any communication with either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
I did with John. He texted me.
You recall generally what that was about?
My son got into a scuffle with some boy at school, and Patrick wasn't in school at the time. I think he went to a doctor's appointment, but Patrick got wind of it. So John was calling to see if my son was okay.
Now, turning back to, again, that morning on the 29th, you called Ms. Reed a couple times. She didn't answer. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at some point, she called you back?
Correct.
And about how long was it after that initial phone call that you had where she hung up?
All right, Cold Pepsi.
I don't
Hey,
know, maybe
Trevor
5 minutes.
Tim, how are ya?
So when she calls back, she makes those statements
see
to you that you just
you.
testified about, and upon her making those statements, what, if anything, was your response?
No, this is
I
a
said,
different
then
girl.
she said she
Hey,
checked Kaylee's
Kevin,
phone
I got rid of
to
that
see if John
girl
had called. And I
yesterday.
said, okay, where are you now? And she said, I'm driving. Can I come to your house? Will you drive my car? I don't remember anything from last night. We drank so much, I don't remember anything. And I said, you need to go home and be with Kaylee if she's there by herself. I'll go look for him or something of that nature. Because I said, you're going to get a DUI. If you were drinking all night last night and you don't remember anything, you shouldn't be driving.
All right. So next question, please.
When you were talking to her on the phone, what, if any, observations did you make of sort of how she was speaking or
She was very frantic, and her voice was elevated. She was very
No,
frantic.
they're not related.
and the loudness that you were describing during the course of that first phone call, what, if any, observations did you make with respect to that in regard to the second?
Same throughout the rest of the
But
day.
they
It was the
sure
same.
talked to the story all together. I'll tell you what.
Do you indicate to her that she needs to go home? Is that right?
Correct.
And what, if anything, did she say in response to that?
She said, I'm going to come to your house. Will you drive my car? And I said, okay.
And after that, what did you do from there?
I started getting dressed. I think that's when I was starting getting dressed. And my husband said, where are you going? I said, I don't know.
Okay, that's weird. She said she was coming to your house. I thought she went to Jen's. That's so weird. So weird. Like, all of a sudden, Karen don't remember shit. She left him at the waterfall. Oh, she don't remember leaving him at 34 Fairview. All this other stuff. And you guys were too afraid for her to go find him alone. Right? Right? Oh, Lord. I just... the more I watch this crap, I swear you.
Something happened. John didn't come home.
Oh, Kevin, Monday, it's going to be great. I'm going to do 2 lives. Oh, Lori Vallow is the Doomsday Cult mom. She's going to be representing herself, and I'm all for it. But anyway.
Karen's worried, so I'm going to go help her. And he said, you're not going anywhere. It's a blizzard. And I said, yes, I am. And I went
It's
downstairs.
not a
I started the car,
blizzard. It
turned
was
off,
barely
and I sat there waiting, and she didn't come.
Late until after
So I called.
7.
During the time that you're waiting in the car, do you know about how long period it was that you were waiting in the car?
I would say at least 10 minutes of sitting in the car.
I guess maybe it's a blizzard to you guys, because sure the fudge ain't no blizzard where I live. That's just a regular old snowstorm to us. I mean, we drive in 2 feet of snow, sometimes 3. 3 if we have to. This is freaking crazy. But anyways.
And to that point, as far as when you went outside to the car, what, if anything, did you observe about the weather? And what, if anything, did you do with your car as you were?
Oh, God.
I cleaned the car off. I turned the car on. I got
Lally, it snowed. We get it. Fucking sakes.
in it, and I thought to myself, well, she thinks somebody got hit by a plow or something. I'll see if there's any accidents. So I called the...
See, she thinks somebody got hit by a plow. What? Something got hit by... No. You thought maybe he got hit by a plow. I'm guessing that was your idea.
Canton, non-emergency line. And I said, have there been any plow accidents? My friend's boyfriend didn't come home. And they said, no, there were no accidents. So then I called Good Samaritan Hospital in Milton to see if anybody had been brought in a car accident. They said no. And then finally Karen called back.
Before we get to that, just in reference to, at any point in time, did you call Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And when you called Mr. O'Keefe, were you able to speak to Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
Do you know how many times you called Mr. O'Keefe?
My husband called him, and I think I called him.
And when was that in relation to you going up to your car and clearing the car?
That was when I was in the house. Karen actually said, "Can you try and call him?"
And you did, and you didn't get an answer.
Correct.
And do you know whether or not your husband got an answer?
He did not.
So you go out to the car, you're waiting, and you make a phone call initially to Canton Police. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know who you spoke to at Canton Police?
I believe it was Officer Good.
Is that someone that you knew in any way prior to this date of January 29th?
We have mutual friends, but no, I'd never met him.
Is that why he was talking about the Blizzard party to you?
Now, you call the hospitals, and then at some point after you finish speaking to the hospitals, the defendant then calls you back, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, can you describe to the jury, so what was the content of that conversation that third time?
She said, I said, "Where are you? I'm in the car." And she said, "I'm at Jen's house." And I said, "Jen who?" She said, "Jen McCabe. She's going to drive my car." And I said, "Okay, stay there. I'll come to there. We'll follow and we'll drop your car off. We'll just take my car and go look for him." And I drove to Jen's, and I pulled in the driveway behind them. I was still on speakerphone. Jen is driving. Karen's in the passenger seat, and we drove. I said, "Do you remember? Did you look through the house? Could he be passed out somewhere in the house?" She said, I don't know. I didn't look." So I said, "Let's do that. Let's get in the cars. We're not taking 2 cars. It's a blizzard. We're going to go back to Meadows, and we're going to go look in the house first."
She probably looked in the house. I'm quite sure she looked in the house. You probably wanted her to check again. And that's fine, because that's being a caring friend. You want to make sure maybe, he didn't wander in after she left and stuff. I totally get that. So yeah, go back to the house and all that great stuff. I totally get it.
First, he could be passed out behind the couch or on the floor. Who knows? So we went to the house.
And I'm sorry, before you get into that, just as far as directionality, where you're going at this initial stage, you're sort of directing what's going to happen and where you're going to go, correct?
Correct.
Now, you had mentioned that the defendant said she was at Jen's house, you asked Jen who, and she said Jennifer McCabe, correct?
Objection. I'll allow it.
With regards to Ms. McCabe, did you know her, or how did you know her prior to this morning of January 29th?
I had met her once when John took her and I to Reebok because he got a 50% discount. So we would go periodically and get the kids' shoes. So John and myself went to Reebok, got shoes, and then we went to the Hillside for lunch. That was it. I wasn't friends with her.
Is that someone that you had programmed in your phone as a contact? Did you have her information prior to
Are
January
we
29th?
still friends with her? Because I
And,
wouldn't
when you
have
went
her
to Ms. McCabe's
friend.
house that morning, how was it that you knew where Ms. McCabe's house was at that point?
I picked up Kaylee there a time or two for John and brought her home if I was heading that way because Jen's house is on the way to John's.
And so you go to Ms. McCabe's house, and can you describe to the jury sort of what you observe or what you see when you're first coming up to Ms. McCabe?
I pulled in the driveway behind Karen's car, and Karen and Jen are in the car talking. I'm still on Bluetooth so I can hear them. And Karen said that she remembered leaving him at Waterfall. And Jen said, "No, I saw you pull up to my sister's house." And then
Wait
some point in the conversation,
a minute. Wait a minute. Why did Jen say that she already told Karen about this on the phone with her? I see. See, when you guys corroborate and try to corroborate stories and stuff, see that this right here, and it's not you. It really isn't you, but you're exposing the other person. I'm just saying, because I'm thinking, yeah, like let's go to the waterfall and stuff like that did come up, and I think somebody put it in their head to go look there first. I know that not you, but maybe Jen McCabe may have wanted to take her on a wild goose chase before finding him. That's what it seems like to me. Let's go back to John's house, make sure he's not there. Then let's make sure we do this. Oh, make sure that we tell him that we stopped and looked at her tail light before we walked in the house stuff. Just absolutely crazy.
she said, "What about my taillight? What about my taillight?" And I looked, and there was a piece missing, but it was caked on with snow. You could tell there was a little black hole, but there was snow like caked on it, and it was a blizzard at this point.
Now,
It wasn't a blizzard. Please stop saying it was a blizzard, please. It's really.
as far as over the course of this early morning when you're making that drive from your house to Mr. McCabe's house, correct?
Yes.
So during that time, can you describe sort of what the lighting conditions were, what the roadway conditions were, what you observed as you were driving over there?
It was not light out yet, and it was really bad driving.
And bad driving reference snow, was that correct?
Yes.
So you get to Ms. McCabe's house, and during the drive from your house to Ms. McCabe's house, you're speaking to both Ms. McCabe
It was
and
bad
Ms.
driving because you don't know
Yes.
how to drive in the snow.
And
Let's be
with
honest.
reference, I think you've said a couple times as far as a Bluetooth. So as far as what you're hearing on the other side of the conversation, is it just one person, or are you able to hear sort of everything that's going on in the call?
I could hear everything. It was like a regular phone call in
Well,
the
of
car.
course you could hear everything.
From where you were,
What?
your
Until
impression
you're
was it was hooked up to the
everything
speaker of the car.
Correct.
And when you get to Ms. McCabe's house, or what you were just testifying about as far as the taillight, when is it that you're making those observations?
In Jen's driveway.
And so about how far away from the defendant's car were you the first time that you see or your attention is drawn to this taillight?
I was parked right behind them in the driveway.
And can you describe which part of the vehicle you're looking at as far as which taillight that you're observing this damage?
The right passenger.
And so from there, as far as Ms. McCabe's driveway, you make these observations. Where is it that you go from there?
Say it again.
So after you're making those observations and you're overhearing that conversation or you're having that conversation with Bluetooth, where did the three of you go?
We went to Meadows, to John's house.
And how was it that each of you sort of got from Ms. McCabe's house to John's house on Meadows?
Jen drove Karen's car, and I followed behind in my car.
And when you arrived there, where did you go? Where did you park? Like,
I pulled in, I think I pulled in right behind. She pulled her car sort of in front of the garage bays, and I pulled in the driveway behind her.
and when you say she, do you know who was driving?
Jen McCabe, sorry.
Driving in Miss Reed's in the front passenger seat.
Correct.
And you're driving your car behind.
Correct.
What kind of car did you have?
A Ford Explorer,
Do you recall what color it was?
dark gray.
And as far as Miss Reed, do you recall what kind of vehicle she had at that point?
A Lexus SUV,
Recall what color that was?
black.
Now, with respect to Mr. O'Keefe, do you recall what kind of vehicle John O'Keefe had?
He has a Traverse.
I'm still here. I'll be in the chat.
It's like a beige green.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could ask to publish what's been marked as exhibit number 2.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts, directing your attention to the screen over here, do you recognize what is up on the screen?
That's John's house.
And does that seem like a fair and accurate trailer? John's house, what that looked like at around time January.
I'll
29th,
still here. I'm just in the chat.
Much snowier, but yes. Oh, I said it was much more snow, but yes.
Now, not visible in this particular photograph, with the driveway that you're talking about facing Mr. O'Keefe's house in Meadows Ave, as we are in this picture, whereabouts would the driveway be, to the left or the right or something?
To the right.
And, Your Honor, with court's permission, if I could ask to publish what's been marked as exhibit 91.
Okay.
And again, Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
That is John's car.
And what is it that's behind John's car?
Behind a basketball hoop?
No, I'm sorry, that's correct. Not the rear of the vehicle, but sort of in the photograph behind on the other side of the passenger side.
Oh, the garage doors?
And there are two garage doors, one on the left, on the right. Is that correct? You're familiar with this house? We've been over it a number of times when Mr. O'Keefe lived there.
Correct.
And as far as, what if anything, were you familiar with as far as Mr. O'Keefe having regarding sort of security around his house?
Security, he has a ring camera that was in the driveway and a ring camera that was at the side door.
And with regard to the garage itself, as far as you've been in there as well?
Yes.
And so what is behind the left door of the garage?
His big old blue convertible.
And on the right side of the garage, what if anything is in behind it?
Nothing. He's got all organized stuff and kids sporting. I don't know if he parked in there or not.
Now, as far as how Mr. O'Keefe kept his garage, kept his home, was there a particular way in which he kept it when he lived there? You know?
Neat freak.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He was a neat freak.
And as you enter into this garage, what if any access would you then have to inside the home?
There's a set of stairs and it brings you right into like the mudroom, which leads into the kitchen.
Now, when you would go over to Mr. O'Keefe's house on this occasion, or any rules or preferences would Mr. O'Keefe have with regard to equipment?
You did not wear footwear in the house. You took your shoes off.
And is that something that applies to people who live there as well as people who are visiting?
Yes.
And how would you describe that a relatively strict rule?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could, I'd like to publish a portion of Exhibit 6 ring video.
Okay.
Gentlemen, if I could have from driveway video number 154. So, Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, that's Karen's car and my car, and John's is in the background.
Now, in front of you on the desk, there should be a laser pointer. It's not just up. Thank you very much. So, pressing on that button and pointing sort of at the screen, if I could ask you just direct the jury's attention to where you see Ms. Reed's vehicle, where you see your vehicle, and where you see Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle as well.
That is John's car. That is Karen's car. That is my car.
Is this a fair and accurate portrayal of sort of where the cars were and what things looked like when you first arrived at Mr. O'Keefe's house, coming from Ms. McCabe's house?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could. Now, with reference to any individuals that you observed in this video, again, using the laser pointer, if you could draw the jury's attention to who you observed and where.
That is Jen McCabe, and that is Karen Read, and that's me.
And at some point, you enter in through the garage, is that right?
Correct.
Now, as far as the garage doors were concerned, when you came back that morning, what, if anything, did you notice about the garage?
The right garage door wouldn't close.
So it was open when you arrived?
I don't recall if it was open when we arrived, but when we were leaving, it wouldn't close.
And do you recall, do you have any idea of how that mechanically worked, like how you would open, how you would close the garage door?
Yeah, there's a code on the side.
And at any point in time, whenever you noticed that the garage door was open, were you or any of the people that you were able to close that door?
No.
And so is that the door that you entered into in order to get into the garage, get into the mud, and take off your shoes and whatnot?
Correct.
And when you came into the house that morning, you went into the mud, what, if anything, did you do with your shoes, and what, if anything, did you observe Mr. Cave and the defendant do with their shoes?
Jen and I both had taken our shoes off in the sort of steps in the garage before we entered into the mudroom. We took our shoes off, and Karen just walked in.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play the video. Now, Ms. Roberts, with reference to the Ring video security system that Mr. O'Keefe had at his home, if you know who had access to that?
I do not.
You obviously, do you know whether or not Mr. O'Keefe had access to that?
He did, yes.
Okay, do you know how or what device he used in order to access it?
I only know he had it on his phone
How do you know he had it on his phone?
because he would check it all the time to see if the kids were home or dropped off or.
That's something you did in your presence?
Yes.
Now, with regard to, at some point when you get to the home, beyond the sort of initial observations you made in Mr. Cave's driveway with regard to the right rear passenger taillight of Ms. Reed's vehicle, what, if any, other observations did you make, or what, if anything else, did you do with reference to that area of the vehicle?
Karen did point it out at one point in the driveway. She said, my taillight, look at my taillight. And I looked at it and I said, you told me you don't remember anything from last night. She said, do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. I think you probably hit something, but let's just go in the house and look for him.
And so as far as your recollection is concerned, that sort of interaction that you had of looking at the taillight, when did that happen?
I don't know if it was well, obviously it wasn't when we got there. It was what must have been when we were leaving to go out to look for him.
When you what? I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if it was when we arrived or when we were leaving to go back out and look for him. But now that I've seen the video, it's obviously when we came back out of the house.
Okay.
And who was present for that?
Who was present?
Yes.
Jen McCabe, Karen Read, and myself.
And as far as where Ms. McCabe parked that vehicle, at any point in time that you were at the house, did that vehicle move at all? And by that vehicle, I mean Ms. Reed's vehicle.
I don't think so.
So where it's parked in that video is essentially where it stayed as far as you know.
I believe so.
Now, with reference to those observations, or when you were looking at the rear passenger taillight area of Ms. Reed's vehicle, how close to the vehicle were you when you were making those observations?
Right in front of it. There was one piece, like a rectangle encapsulated, like whatever was broken. I remember there was one piece of metal sort of sticking out. So if it was an encasement for a light of some sort, I remember looking at it and the piece was sort of sticking out and I thought someone's going to catch their sleeve on that or something.
And now from there, when you arrived at the house, you go into the house, you take off your shoes, what happened then?
I started looking, Jen started looking, Karen, her and Jen went upstairs. I started looking downstairs. I started looking on the other side of the couches to see if maybe he passed out somewhere. And then I went upstairs and Karen was standing in John's room. The bed was made. She was just standing there. Jen had gone in to talk to Kaylee. And then I said, all right, let's go.
Now,
He's not in the house. He's not in the house.
As far as your knowledge of Mr. O'Keefe, him not coming home when any of the children were home, was that something that was normal?
Him not coming home if the children were home? Yeah, he would not do that.
And obviously you knew Kaylee was there, but what, if anything, did you know as to where Patrick was?
He was at a friend's house.
And was that something that you knew independent of this morning, or what had transpired up to that point?
Say that again?
How did you find out that Patrick was at a friend's house?
Karen said, I said, where's Patrick? She said he's at his friend's.
So you were in the downstairs area of the home, is that correct?
Yes.
And looking through the rooms, you didn't find Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
No.
Now, at any point in time, did you go upstairs?
I did.
And when you went upstairs, where in the upstairs did you go?
At the top of the stairs is John's bedroom. So I looked in there. I looked in the bathroom. I looked in the closet. I looked in Patrick's room. I looked in the other two bedrooms and Kaylee was in her room. So Jen was in there, but I was looking through the house.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe's bedroom, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the condition of the bed?
The bed was made.
You mentioned you looked in a variety of different rooms on the second floor.
Well, she doesn't know that because she wasn't there the
What
night
are those
before.
rooms for, if you know?
I think one of them was a computer room.
She's just
There was a room that faced the front of the
moaning
house, and the back room had a bed in it that Mrs. O'Keefe would stay in when she would stay over.
And again, just to be clear, when you say Mrs. O'Keefe, you mean John's mother?
John's mother, sorry,
And as far as the computer room, who, if anyone, had access to that, if you know?
had access to the computer room.
What was it used for?
Oh, there was a desk with a
Oh,
computer.
here we
a
go.
laptop.
And do you know whose laptop that was, whether it was John's, whether it was defendants, whether it was kids?
I don't know if it was the defendants at the time, but John's laptop used to be in that room.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, would ask if I could publish this.
She didn't take the laptop, lady.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could start with Exhibit 92. Ms. Roberts, directing your attention up to the screen, do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
That's Karen Read's Lexus.
And specifically, if you could, using the laser pointer in front of you, direct your attention to where you observed damage.
That's where the metal piece I was describing was.
As far as what's depicted in this photograph up on the screen, is that consistent
Well,
with
there
what you
is no
observed
metal
in
piece
Mr. O'Keefe's
sticking
driveway
out,
and Mr.
lady.
O'Keefe's driveway when you saw it that morning?
Well, caked in snow, but yes.
Well, absent the snow, yes.
Yes.
Girl,
And,
please.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have the next exhibit number 92.
Girl, please. You said there was a little piece missing and a little piece sticking out that you think somebody would catch their arm on. Yeah, and the reason why you said somebody would catch their arm on it because, Mr. O'Keefe, had scratches on his arm. Girl, stop. See, somebody has filled your fucking head. You guys are trying to blame somebody because obviously you may like the people that are involved.
Again, Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes.
As we have closer-up image of the same area, correct?
Yes.
And what's depicted in this closer-up image, is that also consistent with what you observed in Mr. Cape's driveway and Mr. O'Keefe's driveway that night?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask again if I could publish a portion of what's been marked
I
as
bet you
Exhibit
Karen's
41.
car, that's probably a shadow or mark. Give me a break. Because that's not a metal piece sticking out.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to fast forward to about
Oh, let's
2
look
hours,
at
9
this.
minutes, and 30
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah, please show me that it's snowing. It's so snowing. It is snowing like nobody's business. Oh my God, it's such a whiteout. Oh Lord, have mercy. Is this the stupid home visit again? Oh, this is the home visit again. Come on.
Ms. Roberts, direct your attention up the screen to recognize what's on the far portion of
Yes,
the-
that's exactly what it looked
That's
like.
John's
No, that's not what it looked like, girlfriend. They doctored the video. Okay, when snow's
Again, Ms. Roberts,
coming
direct your
this
attention up the screen to
way,
recognize what's
it's
sort of in front of the
gonna
camera,
be cake. When this is
That's
close
Karen's car
to
and John's
the
car.
house,
and
it's
very
not
Karen's
going
car
to be
with this,
gay.
Using laser pointer directed your attention where you observe each of those in this program here.
That's Karen's car. That's John's car.
They could
And
probably
those
pull
essentially the
one
same
over
positions,
somebody's
that
eyes
she
that
was
don't
talking
live in a
about,
snow
that
town.
the jury saw earlier in the ring video from Mr. O'Keefe's house.
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
And what's crazy is the defense doesn't even cross her, because the statements that she made was more good for the defense than it was the Commonwealth. Even though she really tried, adding on all this extra stuff, like it's really ridiculous. Like, okay, it was snowing. That's about 3 to 5 inches of snow. It's not that freaking bad. It's not that bad. You guys are tripping. You guys are tripping.
Do you want this up on the screen or down?
Up for now.
Okay.
But just a moment.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to show you
ridiculous.
just 2 photographs. Ask you to look at those and finish.
Okay.
Do you recognize those? Or do you recognize what's depicted in it?
Do I recognize what?
What's depicted in each of those photographs?
Karen's car.
And may I approach, Ron?
Yes.
I'll seek to introduce the minutes and next exhibits.
Okay, is there any objection? No objection. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, while those are being marked, maybe approach.
Hold on.
Where's all the
Second.
metadata for these pictures and shit? Where's all the metadata, damn it? From now on, prosecutors need to show receipts with metadata. If they don't show receipts with metadata, they could screw us all. And I think a normal person would that doesn't know tech would fall for this BS. But this day and age with Photoshop and everything else, come on. You're accepting things from witnesses and all that great stuff. And not handing over Sally Port videos with metadata, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Wait, what are we doing here? Why are we waiting? What are we waiting on? Okay. Come on, let's show it.
And Ms. Roberts, what's up on the screen now? One, you indicated that's Ms. Reed's vehicle in the same position where Ms. McCabe left the parking lot, correct?
Yes.
This is security is still shot from the same video that you just saw in the prior.
Yes.
Ms. Dillon, if I can have.
I'm not seeing nothing missing. Maybe I'm blind. I'm blind and stupid.
And Ms. Roberts, what's up on the screen? That's the second photograph that I showed you just a moment ago.
I'm not seeing.
Closer up, a zoomed in image of what's in the same still image that you saw in the prior, correct?
Yes.
And again, if you could use the laser pointer, just direct your attention to the damage that you observed on the right rear passenger tail light of Ms. Reed's vehicle.
It don't look like it's missing.
Okay. So you can
Give me a break. It's covered in snow.
now you go
Look at him. Look at her.
look through the home. You don't
Stop
find Mr.
looking at
O'Keefe,
her.
and what happens there?
Then I said, let's go look for him. If he might be walking home, or if you thought he got hit by a plow, let's just. And Jen and Karen wanted to go back to 34 Fairview where they were at. Jen said she saw her pull up to 34 Fairview the night before.
Oh, Jen and Karen both wanted you to go to 34 Fairview. Oh, now they both want you to go to 34 Fairview.
So Karen really wanted to go back there. I was the one that said, no, let's drop a car off, go to Meadows and look through the house, and then we'll start looking if he's not in
No,
the house.
she wanted to go to 34 Fairview. She didn't want to waste no mother effing time. She wanted to go find John. You guys are procrastinating.
So that's what we did. We got in the car and we were going to head back to Jen's sister's house.
And so this conversation, as far as the defendant, as you're testifying, really wanting to go to Fairview, when did that occur in relation to when you got to Mr. O'Keefe's?
On the way from Jen McCabe's house to John's house in the car.
So this is over the Bluetooth as you're driving?
Yes, Karen said I left him at Waterfall, and Jen said, no, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's.
And so after coming out of Mr. O'Keefe's house, you exit the same way that you entered?
Yes.
Come out the garage door, get into your car?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of where was everybody seated in your car when you did?
I was driving, Karen was in the back seat, and Jen was in the passenger seat.
And as far as Ms. McCabe's sister's house, at the time, did you know where that was or who her sister was or anything like that?
I didn't even know she had a sister.
And you know about how long a drive or how far a drive or what the route was that you took going from Meadows to her sister's house?
I think we went main roads because we were looking to see. I mean, I don't know what we were looking for, but we were looking for him. I don't know if we thought he was walking home or if he got hit by a plow. So we went main roads. We pulled out, I think we went Bolivar Street, and then Jen was giving directions because I didn't know where we were going.
Who thought he got hit by a plow? That's what I want to know. Who put it in the mind of Karen that he got hit by a plow? Was it you or Jen McCabe? Which one? Which one? Which one? Because I believe the story was going to be that he got hit by a plow. I really do. I really believe that that's what the story was going to be. Until Peggy O'Keefe said, I blame Karen for leaving him there. And then that's when the Section 12 happened.
And to be clear, Bolivar Street you're talking about, that's Bolivar?
Yes.
And so then Ms. McCabe is then giving you directions as you're driving, correct?
Correct.
Now, as you're driving, again, as far as did you what, if anything, did you see as far as plows or how were the roads treated at that time? What, if anything, did you observe in reference to that?
It was bad driving. There were plows out, but it was really bad driving.
And
It's because you don't know how to drive in
from
snow, mate.
Mr. O'Keefe's house to Ms. McCabe's sister's house, how would you describe the visibility?
It was very poor. It was in the middle of a blizzard.
Now, when you get to
Oh my
the
God.
street,
here
at some
we
point
go
you're
with this.
directed by Ms. McCabe to Fairview Road.
Lally, we know it fucking snowed, okay? You keep saying it was a blizzard. It wasn't a fucking blizzard. I guess that's just me. My bad. I mean,
Correct.
And when you get to Fairview Road, you recall whether or not you took a left or a right, or how did you come onto Fairview Road?
Off of Chapman Street, I took a right onto Fairview.
You took a right from Chapman onto Fairview.
Correct.
And as you're coming down Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you note or observe as far as the sort of elevation of the roadway?
You go downhill.
You go downhill?
Yes.
This particular area, Ken, obviously you've lived in Ken for several years. Are you somewhat familiar with this area, Ken?
Yeah.
And how is it that you were familiar with the area, Ken?
you go downhill. Because I know that you guys got to talk about this elevation because you want to talk about how, there was an incline in the fucking road. So John's phone said he took steps at a decline or incline. It don't matter. 3 flights of stairs or whatever. And they claim it was the decline or incline of the freaking road. Okay. Weird. Like, you're doing everything in your powers to make sure, like, you really want this to be Karen's fault. It's not her fault she left him there. It's not her fault that dude couldn't take rejection. It's not her fault, okay? It's not John's fault either. That dude couldn't take a rejection. And he's the one that sprawled out right there on the lawn, and nobody freaked. Okay, anyways.
Prior to this date, if you've never been to Ms. McCabe's.
The commuter rail is right near there that I would take to work.
Are there any schools in that area as well?
Yes, the John F. Kennedy School.
And you mentioned
Because I really believe that this plan was in motion. This plan was in motion. They were going to blame it on the snowplow driver until that got put in the head. And then they're like, oh, yeah, let's blame Karen. Let's blame her. I mean, that's another way for Higgins to get back at her for rejection, I guess. And for him beating up her boyfriend until he died. Because... nobody, you cannot tell me you look at the back of that vehicle and think a person hit it. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me that. You just can't. I've seen minor accidents involving people. And the car is messed up. There's no way you could tell me that little paint chips on her freaking right there by her window and a taillight being cracked, not fully gone, like in those pictures, that she hit him. There's just no way. 22 miles an hour going backwards. And you guys want to make up the scrapes on his arms were caused by the car? And the taillight and all this stuff, it don't make sense to me.
that your son played baseball, correct?
Yes, and my son and John's nephew also went to the home daycare across the street from the JFK.
Now, Your Honor, with court's permission, I would ask to just publish a brief portion of what's been marked as Exhibit 12.
Okay.
Gentlemen, what I'm going to ask is if you could push this video forward to 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Somebody's hey, I'm hungry.
Mr. Roberts, from what you've seen on the video, as far as what's depicted in this video, is that a fair and accurate portrayal, consistent with what you observed that morning as you were driving around, going from Mr. O'Keefe's house to Ms. McCabe's sister's house?
Yes.
And the turn that this vehicle is taking at this point in the video, about 2 minutes and 40 seconds in, you recognize what street that vehicle is turning onto?
I believe it's Fairview.
Ms. Gilman, if you could.
See, the only reason why his windshield wipers look like this is because he needs windshield wipers. I mean, but it's not that much snow on the ground. See, I see an incline. I don't see a decline.
Now, Ms. Roberts, as you're driving from Mr. O'Keefe's house to this address on Fairview Road that you've never been to before, what's going on inside the car?
Karen was frantic. She wouldn't put her seatbelt on, and I was getting nervous because we're driving in a blizzard. She kept leaning in between the two seats. I think at some point she was texting in the back seat, and then she'd be leaning. She was just frantic the whole morning.
And as far as her screaming, do you recall anything?
Well, do you blame her? She's worried about her boyfriend. And I don't know. She was in between you guys, like you say. I believe she was adamantly looking for him. You guys act like it's a big crime that she found him before anybody else. We didn't see him. Because you guys got to negate the fact that, 7 people drove by him, by where his body was, and they didn't see a body there.
Specifically that she was screaming, or what if any sort of conversation was going on in the car as you were driving?
There was some conversation about a woman I didn't know that was Bella's mom, and she said Bella's mom never liked me. I think Bella lived near Jen's sister, maybe. I don't know. Some conversation about Bella.
Huh? Yeah, because we got to put that in there, the jealousy and all this other great stuff. I know, I get it.
Bella's mom, and Karen said she didn't like me.
And do you recall where you were in your travels when that topic of conversation came up?
No, I don't recall.
Now, in reference to following that, what, if anything, did you say in regards to any other sort of...
Any other what?
Following that conversation in regard to Bella's mom, who you didn't know, what, if anything, did you say or introduce into the conversation?
I would feel
Fairview
bad
Road runs along
like this.
Spring Street, I think it is. Spring Lane. So Spring Lane and Fairview are both off at Chapman Street, and there was a woman he dated that lived on Spring Lane. So when Jen was telling me where her sister's house was, I said, I don't know where Fairview is. And she said, it's near Spring Lane. And I said, oh, where the dance instructor lived. John had once dated a dance instructor. And then Karen said, do you think he could have gone there? Do you think that's where he could have been? No, I was just using it as a reference point. She said it's near Spring Lane. And I knew that the dance instructor lived on Spring Lane.
And just to be clear, when you say the dance instructor, this would be for his niece, Kaylee?
Correct.
And you indicated that the two of them, being Mr. O'Keefe and the dance instructor, had dated at some point in the past, right?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
Oh, it was when Kaylee was little. She was probably like 5.
So almost 10 years before this day that you're driving. Now, as you're driving along and driving down Fairview,
Is that the one
what is
that's
it that
wearing
you're
his,
doing, what, if anything,
his,
Dave doing, that what, if anything, you're defending?
number around her
We were
neck?
looking for John walking or wherever he may be. So I'm driving and looking on both sides. And I think Jen was looking on both sides. And Karen she would be in the back seat, then she was in between us, and she'd be in the back seat, and then in between us.
You two chatty Cappies were in there just chatting away. I guarantee you both were not looking from side to side. But Karen was. But you're trying to make it look like, oh, it's nefarious that she found him. Oh, she knew he was there, right? She didn't even... She's not the one that brought up 34 Fairview. If you ask about, I mean, if you think about it, supposedly.
And as you came down the hill on Fairview, what, if anything, what happened then?
Jen said, my sister's house is right up here. And all of a sudden, Karen said, there he is. Let me the F out of this car. And she started kicking the door.
And how was she kicking the door?
With her feet. How?
I don't blame her. She's trying.
Was she kicking the door?
How hard was she kicking?
Pretty hard. I mean, she wanted to get out of the car, but it was locked because once you start driving, the back door's locked. So I looked over and I didn't see anything. And I looked at Jen and I said, she's crazy. And I unlocked the door and I sat back and watched. And she ran over to a mound of snow.
You were too busy not
So at the
paying
time you're driving
attention.
down the road, have you seen anything?
But she
as you're
was.
driving down, sort of looking at the side of the road, have you seen anything on your side of the vehicle?
No.
And when you say she gets out of the vehicle, is it your side or passenger side where Mr. Cave is? That
The driver's side.
so she gets out of the driver's side of the vehicle and the back passenger, correct?
Correct.
And how quickly does she go, sort of from your car to where she ends up?
She ran over to the
Oh,
mound.
don't start this.
And at that point in time, even when she runs over, could you see what she was running over to?
At some point, I realized it was the shape of a body.
And when was that you realized? When in this sort of sequence were you able to realize that?
That was in seconds. Once she ran over to his body, I said, "Oh my God!" And she lifted up his shirt and started to lay on him.
Yeah, to get him warm.
When you stopped to let her out,
That's
where were you
the
in
very
relation
issue.
to that mound of snow or what you learned?
I think my car was like in the middle of the road. I just stopped.
And in relation to where the mound of snow was, had you driven past it at that point? So where was it?
Yes.
So it was located behind your vehicle?
Yeah.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, I would ask just to play on that for about 6 minutes and 30 seconds.
Just liars. I just think she's brainwashed. Sadly.
Okay. What's depicted in the screen?
Here we go. We're going to start the waterworks.
That's my car.
At least she shows real emotion. Like Jen,
Yes.
I didn't see it.
Now, from this video, you see where in relation to your vehicle, Mr. O'Keefe, where you found this road.
With pointer.
Okay. And Ms. Yeoman, if you could, again, explain about this system happening.
Why did she pull her away like that?
Visuals on screen again. They're just using laser pointer to direct your attention to those are.
That is Jen McCabe. That's Karen Read. That's me.
Roberts, in relation to what you just saw in the video, as far as at some point the rear sort of tailgate or hatchback on your SUV, that was in the up position, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall why that was?
Because I was having Jen get the baby blankets to wrap around him out of my car.
And is that something that you just sort of have in the back of your car at all times?
Yeah.
Now, at any point in time in that sequence, did you call anybody or have any sort of phone calls that you made that went to voicemail at that time?
Did I?
Yes.
I don't know.
And so nothing that you recall, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you observe Ms. McCabe make any phone calls that just sort of went to voicemail and she left her phone in your car?
Objection. Sustained.
Let me take you back for when you're pulling. So as far as the conditions when you pull up and the defendant's banging on the door and gets out and runs over to Mr. O'Keefe, what's depicted in that video, obviously without your vehicle being in the middle of the roadway, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what the road looked like and sort of what you saw upon your arrival?
Yes.
So after the defendant gets out of the vehicle, what did you do? Where did you go?
When I realized it was him or someone, I ran over and I dug his head out from the snow.
And recall, you recognized the person in the snow as Mr. O'Keefe.
Once I dug his head out, yes.
And you recall how his body was positioned as far as how was he on the stomach, on the back, on the side?
He was on his back,
And so you brushed some snow away from his head, is that correct?
off his face.
And when you were brushing the snow off his face, what, if anything, did you
I thought
observe?
Karen was brushing snow off his
He
face.
had blood coming out of his nose and his mouth. And his right eye it looked like a golf ball. His left eye was fine. But the right eye looked like,
Yeah, it looked
a
like
golf
it'd been in a fight, huh? Yeah.
You mentioned that you wiped some snow from around his head. What, if anything else, did you observe on the rest of his body?
He was bleeding in the back of the head. So when I was wrapping I don't know why I was wrapping blankets around his head, but I didn't know. He had a cut on the back of his head.
Do you recall which side of his head that cut was on?
I don't. It just was blood on the blanket that was under his head.
Now, as far as the rest of his body, did that have snow on it as well?
Say it again, I'm sorry?
The rest of his body, separate from his head area. What, if any, snow did you observe on the rest of his body?
He was completely covered.
And you know about how much snow was covering the rest of his body?
I would say like 4 inches, maybe 3. I don't really. It was.
Don't lie. There was only 3 to 4 on the ground. Oh, you got to say that because girl, please. Oh my Lord.
I don't really remember exactly how many, but he was covered.
And so, with reference to
There
Mr.
was
O'Keefe,
grass
when you arrived
underneath
there,
him.
3 of you being
Explain
you,
that
Lieutenant
one.
Ms. McCabe, what is it that you were doing when you first sort of come over to Mr. O'Keefe?
You say there was grass underneath them, but there was snow in the cameras. That's where you caught in a lie.
Well, Karen was laying on top of him, and I told her to get off him because I was going to do CPR. And I said, Jen, you need to call 911. And I started CPR on his chest compressions, and then Karen was giving him mouth to mouth.
And as far as CPR goes, is that something that you had any training in prior to this?
Yes.
And can you tell me a little bit about that as far as what kind of training did you have as far as CPR?
I get CPR certified every 2 years through the American Red Cross at work.
So you start doing chest compressions, is that right?
Correct.
And you direct Ms. McCabe to call 911?
Yes.
Everybody should know CPR.
She was doing mouth to mouth, and she was frantic again, running around.
And she was running around, what, if anything else?
She was running around after the paramedics.
Did I hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead?
Is that something that she said once or more than once?
More than once.
And
She
similar
was
to sort of
worried.
The tonality or the volume of the voice that you were describing before, was that consistent when you're there sort of in front of the house?
Yes.
Now, in relation to where you were with Mr. O'Keefe, obviously you've never been in this house before, is that right?
Correct.
What, if anything, did you observe as far as overhead lights or street lights or anything like that around that area where you found Mr. O'Keefe?
There was a fire hydrant, and there was some weird like electrical box thing sticking out of the ground.
But you don't recall any sort of like overhead lights or anything like that?
I don't recall.
Now, this process of you sort of doing compressions and Ms. Reed's doing mouth-to-mouth and then running around, is the mouth-to-mouth that she's doing, is that sort of consistent or is it intermittent between? When is the running around in relation to the mouth-to-mouth?
I don't remember which was first. I was concentrating on doing chest compressions.
And so while you're doing the chest compressions, at some point do first responders start to arrive?
Correct.
And about how long was it from the time that you sort of get out of the vehicle, go over, realize it's Mr. O'Keefe, et cetera, and to when the first responders arrived?
I don't know. Wasn't long. Maybe under 10 minutes.
During that time, or during any amount of time that you were there, did you see anybody from any of the houses on the street come out of the house or any neighbors come out or anything like that?
No.
Once, if you recall, do you recall whether it was police or fire or ambulance or who showed up first?
I don't know. I think the police showed up first, or the EMTs. I just know the EMTs came over and said, we'll take it from here. I wasn't paying attention to what else was going on.
So you're sort of focused on the chest compressions, and at some point, some paramedic comes over and tells you they've got this.
Yes.
And so after that, where did you go?
After that, where did I go? I stayed in the area. I think I went back over to the car.
And as paramedics are working on, you're over by your vehicle, correct?
I think so.
And so where was, what were you doing, and where was Mr. Cave, and where was the defendant at that time?
Karen was running around the body while the EMTs were trying to work on him. She was just frantic.
And so you're over by the car, and Ms.
You act like
Reed is
that's
running
a
around
good thing.
over where Mr. O'Keefe is.
Yes.
Where was Mr. Cave?
I don't know. She was somewhere around the car.
Closer to you than where Mr. O'Keefe was?
I don't know.
Now, where Mr. O'Keefe was, if you know, where was he in relation to the roadway or the paved sort of pathway of Fairview Road?
I don't know because you couldn't tell which was the road and which was the grass. Like you couldn't tell where the road began and ended. So I don't know.
Now, you described the defendant sort of running around Mr. O'Keefe frantically. What, if anything, was she saying at that point?
Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
And that sort of phraseology or the way she put that, was that consistent throughout? Is that how she stated it?
Yes.
And again, in that same sort of loud volume voice at the time?
Yes.
Now, at some point,
Oh, you mean you didn't say?
Mr. O'Keefe is taken
Did I
from
hit
where
him?
he
Did I
is
hit
by
him? Did I
paramedics.
or hit him?
Yes.
I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. You didn't hear that?
You
Oh.
observe in that area.
His phone was under him, and it was grass.
Now, as far as the graphs that you observed, how was that in relation to sort of the rest of the area where Mr. O'Keefe was?
Everything else had snow.
So everything else is covered in snow, and when he's lifted off the ground underneath his body, is that where the grass is?
Yes.
And his phone was where in relation to his body? As far as when he's lifted up, what part of his body had been open?
Like maybe his shoulder, maybe it was like his back. So when they lifted him up, it was under where like his, whatever the right side of his back.
And what I'm asking is basically sort of up towards the shoulder blade or down towards his lower back, if you.
In the middle.
And when you saw the phone
Did she say about the grass?
on grass, what if anything did you do with Mr. O'Keefe?
See, grass, the phone on the grass. And that is a mother effing lie. Because there was no snow underneath him. I mean, no grass underneath him, supposedly. There was just snow. I mean, when they took out the leaf blower and all that great stuff, to, look for evidence and uncover blood spots and all that great stuff. There was just snow. It was nothing else.
I picked it up. I put it in my pocket. And at some point, one of the first responders asked if I had it. I handed it over.
Do you recall who that first responder was?
No.
Do you recall even whether it was a police officer, a firefighter, or a paramedic?
No.
Was
Now,
it Lindsay?
as Mr. O'Keefe is being taken from where he was located, found him to the ambulance. What happens then? What goes on from that?
At some point, Officer Good told Karen to calm down because she was frantic. And at some point, Jen and Karen were in the back of a police cruiser to warm up. I was standing outside watching the ambulance because I could see in through the ambulance that they were moving things and working on them.
Karen was not sitting down
So what
for
kind of
crap.
conversation did
She
you
was
have with
up,
the defendant
down,
or
up,
Mr.
down,
Cade in
up,
reference to what you were
That's
seeing in the back of the head?
lies.
I said, they're working on him. They're working on him. And at one point, Karen grabbed the front of my jacket and screamed in my face and said, are they working on him? Is he alive? And I said, they're working on him. They're working on him. They wouldn't be working on him if he was dead. And then she had us hold hands and pray. And then at some point,
I can understand
she
the
had blood on her
prayer.
hands and she told us she had her period. So I think she was just in a state of shock, maybe.
And what anything did either you or Mr. Cade say to her when she said that?
We said, no, that's not your blood. That's John's.
And what happened
Then
then?
the ambulance drove away.
And if you know about how long was it from the time that you were told by the paramedic to
Here
step
comes
away
the
from Mr.
paramedic.
O'Keefe,
She lied.
From that point to when the ambulance drove away.
The paramedics
I
are
don't know.
in.
I don't think it was long. I watched them
That
work
is a lie.
on whatever they were doing in the back of the ambulance, and they got in the ambulance and drove away.
And after the ambulance left, where did the three of you go, or where did you go? Where did Ms. Reed go? Where did
Karen, I had her in my car. Jen was going up to the door to her sister's house, and I said to the police, I had been on the phone now. I called Mrs. O'Keefe. I had called John's mother. I had called John's father. At some point, Karen was on the phone with John's sister-in-law, Erin, telling him John's dead. So I grabbed the phone from her. They said, he's not dead. He's in the back of an ambulance. He's been in an accident. And she said that Paul was going to go, John's brother, to the hospital that they were bringing John to. So I spoke to I called Mr. O'Keefe. He didn't answer.
Next question. That'll stand. The next question.
So you call Mr. O'Keefe and Mrs. O'Keefe John's parents.
Correct.
At some point, you have a conversation with them, correct?
Correct.
And do you know why it was that Mr. Cade was going into the house on Fairview?
Do you know why?
To wake her sister, I think.
And after those conversations, so you grab the phone from the defendant, you speak to Erin O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
And following those conversations with members of the O'Keefe family, where is it that you were going from there?
I asked Mrs. O'Keefe if she had four-wheel drive, and she said no. And Mr. O'Keefe had a van that didn't have four-wheel drive. So I said, I'm going to come get you, and I'll take you to the hospital.
All right. So why don't we end this now for now? Okay. All right, jurors will take a luncheon. Because the jury will have a few minutes.
Should be closed and leave your books on the chairs. All rise, jury out.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. No, we're not leaving yet, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
So if I could take you back just for a moment, I apologize for this, but just for a moment back to when you first, where Mr. O'Keefe is on the grass, and at any point in time when you observed him, what, if any, observations did you make as far as how Mr. O'Keefe was dressed at that time?
Was he dressed?
Yes.
He had jeans on. I couldn't really tell because he was covered in snow, but I know that I think he had 2 layers on because when the defendant lifted his shirt.
Do you recall if any one of those layers was like a winter jacket or any kind of heavy coat or anything like
He was
that?
barely out there that one.
I'm sorry, no, you don't recall? Or
No, it was not a coat.
It was only 80 degrees temperature. Like he was barely out there. He was maybe out there for a few
Now-
hours. Not
Take it back to
6 hours.
when you were in front of the house and Mr. O'Keefe was in the back of the ambulance, and at some point in time that ambulance leaves, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you know where the ambulance was going?
Good Samaritan Hospital.
And following that, you mentioned that Ms. McCabe went inside the house, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall what it was that caused her to go inside the house?
No, I'll allow that. Not what anyone said.
I think she was going to wake her sister.
And after, was there anybody else that?
Hey, I'm
non-
still here. I'll be
responders or police officers
back.
that- Any other sort of civilian people show up that you recall?
Matt showed up at some point. Met Jen's husband, Matt.
That was before you left, is that correct?
Yes.
And just to be clear, you had, we'll get to this more in a moment, but you had left from the house once, come back, and then left again?
Yes.
And when her husband, Matt McCabe, showed up, which of those times was that vehicle?
I think he was there when I left the first time.
And did you have any conversation with him?
I just said, he said, I said, I'm going to get the O'Keefes. He said, do you want me to come with you? And I said, no. So he went in the house.
And when you left, who, if anyone, initially when you left, who, if anyone, left with you?
I left with Karen Read.
And as you're leaving your car, you're driving, is that correct?
Yes.
Where's Miss Reed in the car at that point?
Say it again.
Where was Miss Reed in your car at that point?
In the passenger seat.
And as you were leaving, what, if anything, was you were doing or talking about, or what was going on when you left that first time?
As we were leaving, she was saying to me, if anything happens to John, I'm going to kill myself. You need to take care of these kids.
And how did you respond to that?
He's not going to die. No one's doing anything of that nature or something of that nature, I said.
And as far as you're driving away, Chapman, and you're facing towards Cedar Crest, is that right?
Yes.
And so when you left, are you following in that sort of same direction towards Cedar Crest?
I took a right onto Cedar Crest.
And then where did you go from there?
And then I got to Dedham Street and I went to take a right. And then Officer Good let me go to pick up the O'Keefes to take them. I had to give him my phone number so that he could get in touch with me if he needed to. So he did call and he said, do you have Miss Reed with you? And I said, yes. And he said, please bring her back. Her parents have called in a suicide. They said she's saying she's suicidal, so they want her to be sectioned.
And so coming back to that in a moment, but before you had left the scene, you hadn't talked to any police officers or anything at that time, correct?
No, other than my name and phone number, but no.
So you gave them your information and then said, I have to go pick up you.
Yes.
So you get that call from Officer Good, and then you come back to the house, is that right?
Yes.
And during any of that time, you recall the defendants, I know you had mentioned she spoke to Aaron. Was there anybody else that the defendant spoke to or talked to while you were with her in the car?
She spoke to her mother. And then I ended up taking the phone and speaking to her mother, and I gave her my phone number. And I said, I'm going to go to the hospital. She said, please make sure she does not have her purse. She has medication in her purse. I don't want her to take.
And then when you arrived back at the scene, what happened?
She just got out of the car and walked to the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, did she walk in? By she, you mean the defendant?
I'm sorry, yes.
And who, if anyone, did the defendant walk from your car to the ambulance with?
She just walked. I think she just walked by herself. I had her phone because I had been talking to her mother. So then one of the first responders came over and said, do you have her phone? And I said, yes. Her mother said, make sure she does not have her purse.
And then following that conversation with one of the first responders, where did you go from there?
I went to go pick up the O'Keefes.
And as far as your drive from Canton, you went to where did the O'Keefes live?
Braintree.
So your drive from Canton to Braintree and then subsequently from Braintree to Brockton, what, if anything, do you observe about sort of the driving conditions at that point?
I was actually on the phone with Katie Camerano and I spun a couple times on 93 right near the Braintree exit. So that when I got to the O'Keefes, that we went back roads to Brockton because I didn't want to go on the highway.
And as far as the O'Keefes, as far as in your car from Braintree to Brockton, that was both John's mother and father?
Correct.
And at some point you get to the Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton, correct?
Correct.
And do you know what time it was that you got there?
I don't know.
When you arrived, where is it that you and the O'Keefes sort of go within the hospital?
John's brother Paul had already arrived. And then we all walked in. We were in the waiting area. John's cousin actually works on the switchboard. We had been talking to her on the way in because with COVID restrictions, we didn't know if we were going to be able to get in or, so she had come out from the switchboard, her office, because she knew there had been an accident. So she came out to greet her family. And then I asked her to take me to the bathroom to clean up and to the chapel.
And why was it that you had to go clean up?
Say it again.
Why was it that you had to go clean up?
Because I had blood on my hands.
Now, Ms. Roberts, you mentioned that during part of the drive from Camden to Braintree, you spoke to Ms. Camerano, correct?
Yes.
And during either that drive or the subsequent drive from Braintree to Brockton, who, if anyone else, did you speak to over the phone?
And Karen called me repeatedly from the ambulance asking if I was going to come to the hospital. Then she called when the O'Keefes were in the car and said she dropped him off at a party. And Mrs. O'Keefe said, "You just left him." And Mr. O'Keefe said, "Leave her alone. She's been through enough." She called a few times while we were on the ride. And then she called a lot when we were at the hospital asking if I knew anything, if he was dead, is he dead? She would hang up and then call back, hang up and then call back.
And if you know about how many times was that?
At least 10.
And that same sort of phraseology that she was using on scene as far as this dead, she repeated that in the phone calls at the hospital.
Yes.
Now, once you arrive at the hospital and you're able to clean up a little bit, where did you go from there? What happened there?
I went to the chapel and I said a prayer. And then I went in and talked to John's cousin, and she said that Dr. Rice was going to ask to meet with the family and that they would be told how John was doing and that they would bring John's family back to see John. So when I came out, they were being called in by Dr. Rice, and I sat in the waiting area.
And after some period of time, sitting in the waiting area, what happened then?
Mrs. O'Keefe came out and told me John was gone. And then she asked if I wanted to see him. So I did, because I figured it would be better than when I last saw him. Maybe he was cleaned up, but it was not. It was worse.
Sorry, ma'am, but as far as say that it was worse, you happened to a room where John was, is that right?
Yes.
And what did you see?
He was in a neck brace, and both eyes were huge. Whereas when I found him, it was only one, but they were like black, almost like filled with, I don't know, blood or fluid. They were huge.
Beyond what you observed with eyes, what, if anything else, did you see on John's body as you were?
He had scratches on his arm,
Do you recall which arm it was?
his right arm,
Do you recall where on his arm?
like here.
That's the record reflected the witnesses pointing to their forearm.
Yes.
Following that, as far as going in to see John, what happened then?
We came back out to the waiting area. Mrs. O'Keefe wanted to get his necklace off, but I couldn't get it. So her and Paul went back in to get the necklace off. And Karen had called me at some point from the hospital and said, "My father's going to be coming. Can you just keep a lookout for him?" So I said, so when Mr. Reed, her father, walked in, Mr. O'Keefe recognized him and he said, "That's Karen's father." So I went over and I said, "Mr. Reed, Mr. O'Keefe would like to speak to you." And then I just stood there. I didn't know what to do.
And at some point, did you leave from the hospital?
I did. I took Mr. O'Keefe in my car and Paul took Mrs. O'Keefe in his.
And where did the two vehicles, where did you go?
I dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house and then I went home.
And without getting into too much detail as far as the road conditions that you described earlier, how were they?
It was absolutely horrible. I told Mr. O'Keefe, if you see a front door in your vision, we are about to hit a house because I can't see where we're going. And my windshield wiper broke.
Now, so you dropped Mr. O'Keefe off at John's house on Meadows, is that right?
Yes.
And Ms. Reed's vehicle, was that still there at that point?
I think so. I don't recall, but I think so.
And then you went home, is that correct?
Yes.
Later on that day or that afternoon, what if anyone came to your house to speak to you in regard to what?
There were 2 officers, but I don't remember their names.
And do you recall which department they were from?
The state police.
As far as the officers that came to your house and spoke to you, you don't recall their names, is that correct?
I don't.
Do you recall if either one of them was a Trooper Proctor?
It was not.
And where in your house did you speak to you?
In the dining room.
And did they speak to anybody else at your house at that time?
My husband.
And as far as when they spoke to you and they spoke to your husband, where were you? Starting with yourself, do you know where your husband was when the troopers were speaking to you?
I don't know where he was, but he wasn't in the room with me.
And same as far as when the troopers were speaking with your husband, where were you?
I was not in the room.
Following that, did you have occasion to speak to any other troopers or members of the state police at any point in time afterward?
I've only spoken to Michael Proctor one time. It was from Jen's house.
And when was that?
I don't know, maybe a couple days later, because Jen and I were re-going over whatever thing had happened. Mrs. O'Keefe had advised us to make a timeline because she said this could be a while. You guys aren't going to remember something years from now. So sit down and write down what you remember. And I, at that point, said, well, when she first called, she said he was dead. And Jen said, I don't think you told them that. So Michael Proctor called, or she was on the phone with him, or I don't even know. And I said, could I speak to him? So I told him so that somebody had it documented.
So as far as Trooper Proctor was concerned, that phone conversation, is that the only contact that you have with Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
And if you recall, was it February 1st or so that you met with some troopers at Mr. Cave's house?
State trooper who?
At some point, did you meet with troopers at Mr. Cave's house?
Yes.
And if you know, was that on or around a couple days later, like February 1st or so?
I don't, but yeah, maybe. I don't know. I can't be sure.
Were either of those troopers that you met at Mr. Cave's house, were either of those troopers Trooper Proctor?
No.
And do you recall where within Ms. McCabe's house you spoke to them?
In the living room.
And beyond yourself and the troopers that you spoke to, was there anybody else in the room with you when you spoke to them?
No.
And at some point, either then or subsequent to then, was there any request made by any trooper from the state police in regard to your cell phone?
To my cell phone, yes.
And do you recall if it was that day or a later date?
It was not that day. I think it was the next day. It was within the next 2 days. They wanted to clone my phone.
And did they advise you of anything or give you any form that you had to fill out and execute prior to doing that?
Yes, I had to fill out a form.
And as far as your phone was concerned, were there any restrictions or anything that you gave to them as far as what they could look at or what they could clone or what they could do with your phone?
No.
And as far as how sort of that process works, as far as the cell phone extraction or anything, do you know anything about that?
No.
And do you recall how long it was that you were without your phone at the time you handed it over to them whenever you got back?
Well, they took both of our phones at the same time, and we didn't get them back for like 7 or 8 hours.
And just to be clear, when you say both of our phones, you're
Jen-
who else?
Jen's phone and my phone.
Now, at some point or at any point, did you give any kind of interview or have any conversation with any officer from the Canton Police in regard to what happened that day?
No.
And are you familiar with a Canton officer named Michael Lang?
Yes.
How do you know?
My daughter and his daughter are friends.
So beyond your daughters being friends, is that someone that you know or that you socialize with or anything like that?
No, I mean, they've come over to my house, his wife and him, one time, but we don't hang out with them socially. His wife and I are friends.
Now, at some point around this date, around January 29th, let me ask you, turning to the next day of January 30th, do you recall what you did that day?
We went over to the O'Keefe's house. My daughter, Jen, and Jen's daughter, and myself.
And following that, do you recall where you were?
My daughter wanted to get dropped off to her friend's house at Mike Link's.
And so after leaving the O'Keefe's house, is it still the same as far as yourself, your daughter, Ms. McCabe, and her daughter?
Her daughter stayed at the O'Keefe's.
And as far as Ms. McCabe was concerned, was it after dropping your daughter off, did you go anywhere with Ms. McCabe after that?
I just stopped at Mike Link's house, I think, and then we went home.
And so when you got to your daughter's friend's house, who, if anyone, did you speak with?
Mike's wife came out to the car to see how I was and how the O'Keefes were, and so she talked to us for a little, just asking how everyone was.
And if you know, ma'am, do you know about how long that conversation was?
I mean, I'm a talker, so it's probably a while. I'd say at least 45 minutes.
Yeah, Jen
Was
said
that
you were a
conversation like
talker.
through the window, or did she get in the car? You know,
I think she got in the car. She was in the back seat because it was freezing.
from that conversation, do you recall anything beyond sort of how people were doing, or anything? Did you discuss anything about sort of what you had seen or what you had heard the day before on the 29th?
I don't recall. It was just a regular conversation. Well, not regular, obviously, but she was more concerned how the O'Keefes were doing, how the kids were doing.
And then after you left from the Lang's house, where did you go? Where did you and Ms. McCabe go?
I don't know. I'm assuming home.
Let me have a moment here.
Yes.
May we approach this briefly?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You're the shit stir.
Sorry, Your Honor, one moment. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Little? Okay, all right.
Oh, thank you.
Your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth call Ms. Laura Sullivan to the stand.
Here we go.
And Mr. Lally, I'd like you to tell me when you want me to give that instruction.
I think it's,
So just wave it for me, flag it for me.
Yep, because you got to make it look like she was a jealous girlfriend and she wanted to end his life. Yep. She had her own life, like her whole life. She was successful. She didn't need him.
raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give the court during the case hearing, should the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Am I tripping?
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Why is it like that?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Laura Sullivan, Sullivan.
And where do you live?
Pembroke, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Pembroke?
Almost 6 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Pembroke with?
I live with my boyfriend and our 3 children. 2 stepchildren that are with us half the time, and then my son, Ben.
And your son, how old is he?
He's 10.
I'm sorry.
10. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. And your
John's
stepchildren, how
best
old are they?
friend,
15 and 13.
Godson.
Now, do you work, ma'am?
I do.
What do you do?
I work in human resources.
How long have you been doing it?
Just over 6 years.
And if I could turn your attention to New Year's Eve of 2021 into New Year's Day of 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where you were?
I was in Aruba.
And if you could explain to the jury sort of how often was that a regular trip that you did around that time of year?
Yeah. We've been doing a trip like around that time for, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. This will be our 6th year, I believe.
And over the course of those 5 or 6 years that you've done that, when you say sort of we, how did that start and how was that expanded if at all?
So we've been going, Josh and I have been going to Aruba for years. In 2021, post-COVID, we decided to bring our children. We had never gone with them before. And since it was post-COVID, a lot of people are kind of stir crazy. And a group of our friends jumped on board. And so we went from just the 5 of us going to approximately 60 people.
And as far as yourself and or the other people, how was this all at one sort of facility or how were the bookings?
So we all stayed at the Renaissance, which is in downtown, and we buy timeshares. So it was a timeshare resort where we would purchase weeks that people owned. And so if they weren't going for that year, we would buy a week. So we were able to get, I think it was something, close to 20 rooms for all of us to go for the same week.
And as far as the planning in regard to that year in particular, when did that planning process sort of begin?
It starts approximately a year in advance because the rooms go on sale almost immediately because people want to get rid of them. So I would say it was probably around January of 2021 that we booked our room for that year.
And once you had booked your room, as far as the family and friends group that you were talking about, how was that sort of put out to them, like through what means?
We would, I would post on Facebook, more rooms are available for Aruba if anybody was interested in going. So the timeshare owners would reach out to me directly. Is there anybody else who would want to go? And we would look for any interested either friends or what have you to join our trip.
And so at some point in time over the summer of 2021, say July or August or so, was there someone who friend of yours that reached out in regard to possibly coming on the trip?
Yeah, I received a text message from John O'Keefe interested in learning more information about our trip.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of how do you know John O'Keefe?
I met John in May of 2013. I met him at a bar in South Boston he was with Pat Rogers at the time. Post meeting John, I started dating Pat, and my son's father is Pat Rogers. And
Stop you there.
Yep.
So as far as John O'Keefe and your son's father, Pat Rogers, did you know or did you come to know sort of what they did for a living?
yeah, they were both Boston police officers.
And did you know sort of what the relationship was beyond co-workers of Mr. O'Keefe and his wife?
Yeah. They were best friends.
So at some point following that meeting in 2013, you began to date Mr. Rogers, is that right?
Correct.
And what happened?
So in July of 2013, I became pregnant. And in November of 2013, Pat committed suicide.
And okay.
Yeah.
Following that, how do you describe sort of the relationship with Mr. O'Keefe, or how did it evolve?
So in November of 2013, I was on a work trip, and I had not had the best conversation with Pat. It just didn't feel right. And I called John and said, you need to go find him. I can't get a hold of him. He won't answer his phone. And so John left his nephew's birthday party and called a bunch of people on the way. And ultimately, Pat was found in the basement of his house. And John was there immediately following, but he was the one that found people to go find Pat. Immediately following that, John never really left my side, as a support system.
And at some point following that, you had your son.
Yeah.
And before or after that, at some point, did you have a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to your son?
It was his birthday, December of 2013, and we went to the Playwright, which is where we had all met. And I gave him a card and I asked him to be Ben's godfather, and he said yes.
And in relation to your son, was Mr. O'Keefe, was John involved in your son's life?
Yes, very much so.
Selfless person.
He was every birthday, Christmas. He was always in contact. He was the first person in my delivery room after I gave birth. He was a constant. He was a connection to Pat, and always making sure that Ben was taken care of in the sense of being there to tell stories or what have you from his relationship with Pat.
And through sort of his relationship with you and your son, Mr. O'Keefe also become familiar with your family as well?
Yeah. Yep.
And in regard to your family, was there some kind of term, or how would they relate to Mr. O'Keefe?
The Godfather. He was called the Godfather to almost everybody.
Now, ma'am, if I can turn your attention back to that summer of 2021, you received a text from Mr. O'Keefe, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
So I'm sorry, you do have to say yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
after you received that text, did you reach out to Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, I gave him a call because I was excited. I was immediately excited. I gave him a call, explained to him that we had a group of rooms. We were going with, I don't even know the number at that time that had, signed up to go, but it was a lot of kids. It was all of our friends, and that they would have a great time.
And from that, did he give you any sense or say anything about who from was it just himself or like who was coming along?
He had mentioned that it would be the kids, and he said Karen would be joining him as well.
And at that point, at some point subsequent to that, you knew him to be referring to Karen, correct?
Yes.
At that point, had you met Karen Read? Did you know who that was?
I had not. I knew that they were dating, but I had never met Karen, though.
And in addition to himself, it would be Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Reed, the defendant, and his niece and nephew, Patrick Gale.
Correct. Yes.
And if you know, in relation to your son, as far as Mr. O'Keefe's nephew, Patrick, where are they in relation as far as age?
They're like three years apart. 3 years apart.
Now, when you had that phone conversation with Mr. O'Keefe, what if any interest does he show as far as going through?
After asking a couple questions, I could hear Karen in the background, and he put Karen on the phone, and that was the first time I had spoken to her. He basically said, just talk to her so you can answer her questions.
Can you recall what kind of questions they were or what it was about?
She was interested in the room setup, how many people could sleep in a room, and how the room is set up. You have a king-size bedroom, and then there's a kitchen area, and then there's a living room that has a pull-out couch. And I explained that it's a 4-person occupancy room, and you could get a roll-away bed as well.
And following that conversation, when was the next time, if at all, that you had any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed in regard to the room? So
during that conversation, Karen mentioned that she needed her own bathroom and she needed her own space, and that she wanted 2 rooms. And so I put them in contact with a woman that I knew had 2 rooms for them to, figure that piece out. I don't handle any of that. I put people in contact with whoever owns the rooms. I put them in contact with the woman who had the 2 rooms, and I know that they had, paid her relatively quickly. I mentioned to John that the rooms, I couldn't promise that the rooms would be next to each other, and they weren't. They were on opposite sides of the hotel, but they got 2 rooms.
And when you say opposite sides of the hotel, where sort of where those rooms were in relation to each other and who stayed in the room?
So the pool and lobby is in the center, and then the hotel comes like this, and there are pool walkout rooms on the first floor of each. And Karen and John were on this side, and the kids were on this side, and they both had walkout rooms.
And as far as sort of front door to front door, do you know about how far away they were from each other?
I would say, steps wise, maybe 200. But the hotel it's small enough, but it was separated by a lobby, the front entrance, the outside entrance.
Now, with regard to your arrival, when was it that you arrived in Aruba?
So the timeshare rooms run Friday to Friday. So we were booked for the 31st through the 7th. Josh's birthday is December 30th. So we went down as a family a day early, and we had friends who were already down there since Christmas. John's timeshare room woman reached out and said, hey, we're leaving early if you want to arrive early. So him, Karen, and the kids actually came down on the 30th as well. They were on the flight following us. And then the rest of the 60-ish people, however many were there, showed up on the 31st.
And so from that first day that you arrived there, as far as when you got there on the 30th, when was the first time that you saw John, or when was the first time that you saw anyone from that group?
It was, we were at the pool, so it was not long after they had landed. He texted me and said, we're here. And Ben and I jumped out of the pool and went to the lobby to see him. And then on the way back from the lobby, I saw somebody banging on the window on the left-hand side of the rooms, and I didn't know who it was. And then I saw Kaylee, and I was like, oh, well, that must be Karen.
And again, was this the first time that you had seen Karen face-to-face or met Ms. Reed?
Yes.
And just for clarity purposes, as far as Ms. Reed is concerned, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Did you just identify as to where she's seated, or an article of clothing that
She's right there.
she's has a record reflect identification of the identified?
Okay.
Thank you. Now, after you see this person bang on the window and you recognize Kaylee, what happened?
She came out, she gave me a big hug, said, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I recognized you from pictures.
And following along from there, what happened then as far as the day was concerned?
So as I mentioned, it was Josh's birthday. We had already made plans to go out for dinner. Our friends who had been there since Christmas have a 17-year-old daughter who watched our children so we could go out for dinner. I mentioned it to John. I said, we'll just add you to the reservation. You can join us for dinner. The kids can stay with Chloe. And they said, absolutely. So we all went out for dinner that evening to Screaming Eagle.
And Screaming Eagle, where is that in relation to the hotel room?
It's probably about a 15-ish minute cab ride.
And when you arrived there, what, if anything, do you recall about sort of the dinner or how it went?
So we were sitting outside on the patio. It was Karen, myself, our friend Laura. Across from Laura was her husband, Dave. Josh was in front of me, and John was in front of Karen.
And what, if anything, specific you recall about the dinner, or sort of what happened at dinner?
So we, the waiter came over. He started taking drink orders. Karen placed her order. I placed mine. Laura placed hers. Dave placed his, and then Josh ordered a dirty martini with blue cheese stuffed olives.
Okay.
I'll allow it. I don't know where it's going, and you can move to strike if it, unless you wanted to see me, Mr. United. Okay.
Briefly, my butt.
So Ms. Sullivan, turning back to at the restaurants, the drinks that are ordered, people have what they have. And at the end of the evening, as far as the bill comes at some point, correct?
Correct.
And what, if anything, do you recall about that?
Karen had paid the bill prior to us receiving it.
And
Well, that was
what kind of reaction did you or anyone have in regard?
The entire table was.
Oh, that's such a crime that she paid for the bill. Oh, that's such a crime. And she also offered to pay for your whole trip there because she falsely accused your sister. Or not but your sister's, whatever. Because that's such a crime. Mm-hmm.
Kind of taken aback, said it wasn't necessary, wanted to Venmo or give cash or something along those lines. And she declined, saying that she was honored to be there and wanted to pay for it.
Turning your attention to the following day, what, if anything, do you recall about the next day being, that would have been, 31st, is that correct?
Yes.
So turning your attention to December 31st, 2021, what, if anything, do you recall about that day in specific regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
John was very vocal on the 30th on how he just wanted to sit in the pool and watch the Alabama game.
And he was a pretty big Alabama fan, is that correct?
Yes.
And so over the course of that day, what, if any, interaction did you have with either, starting with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, interaction did you have with him?
I saw him in the pool. I know he was sitting at the pool bar watching the game with Josh. I saw the kids. I recall seeing Karen. I don't remember if we spoke or not. But it was mostly in the pool because we were waiting for the rest of our friends to show up.
Now, amongst the rest of your friends that showed up, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you
I have 2.
Hey,
have?
Hood.
Brother or sister?
How are you?
I have a younger brother and a younger sister,
And with reference to your younger sister, what's her name?
Marietta.
And how much younger than you is Mary?
She's 10 years younger than me.
Go with the.
And was Marietta Sullivan?
She's a
coming in
jealous,
as well?
She was.
racing lunatic.
Recall about what time it was that she arrived or that she came to the hotel. When was the first time you saw her?
It's tough to remember, but I want to say everybody showed up on one of the first or second flights that came out of Boston. So I'd say she was there by 1 p.m.
And if you recall, what, if any, plans were there as far as dinner was concerned on that evening of New Year's Eve?
So what we tend to do is book reservations, and if people are interested in joining, they can join us. And that night we had approximately 40 people going to have dinner on the beach at Moomba Beach. Around, I want to say it was like 7 o'clock. We had our reservations for.
And did Mr. O'Keefe and defendant Ms. Reed join you for dinner that evening?
They did not know.
Now, let me take a step back just for a moment. As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, prior to your arrival in Aruba, did you have her phone number, or did you have any way of contacting her?
No.
And when was it that you got Ms. Reed's phone number?
John had added her and I and Chloe to a group text the night that we had gone out for dinner to make sure that we could all communicate with Chloe to make sure the kids were okay.
So you got her phone number in relation to watching kids, as far as Patrick and Kaylee and your children and everybody.
Correct.
Now, if you recall, you go out to dinner. You think the reservation was about 7 or so. Do you recall about what time it was that you got back to the hotel?
I want to say it was around 9:30, 10 o'clock by the time my group got back. I know there was a couple different seatings. So we probably got back around like 9:30, 10 o'clock.
And as far as your group was concerned, your sister Marietta, was she within your group that went out to dinner?
Yes. Yep.
And beyond your younger sister Marietta, did you have other sort of immediate family with you on this trip as well?
My mother was with us as well.
And with regard to your sister Marietta and your mother, what, if anything, was there as far as where were each of them staying?
So they had their own room. I think it was a couple away from us on the 5th floor.
Is that the top floor as far as this hotel is?
Yes.
Now, once you arrived back from dinner, where was it you and your group went?
The kids can swim. We ring in the new year at the pool bar, watching it on the TVs, and then watching the fireworks.
Now, when you came back to the hotel and you went at some point to the pool area, your sister Marietta, do you know where she went?
She actually, when we got back from dinner, she went up to her room with my mom and essentially put my mom to bed. She didn't want to be up anymore, but she went to a change as well.
Now, when you came down to the pool area, as far as Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed was concerned, did you see them in that area?
I saw John, I want to say around 10:30-ish. I don't know the exact time. It was definitely before midnight.
And where in relation to the hotel did you see him at 10:30?
He was standing behind me at the pool bar.
And at some point does your sister come out to the pool area after putting your mother to bed?
Yeah, so right before I saw John at the pool bar, I saw my sister. She came out and she was visibly upset.
And, Your Honor, in regard to the instruction that you would request about this, maybe.
All right, thank you. So, jurors, you're about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by Ms. Reed. Be mindful that the defendant is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictments. The witness's testimony may not and indeed must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or is.
Yeah, but that's what this is for bad character. They want to paint a bad light on her, that she was a raging lunatic girlfriend that ran over boyfriend 22 miles an hour backwards in the snow. Yes, that's what they're definitely doing.
Is evidence that she has a propensity to commit the crimes with which she has been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here, but you may consider the acts solely on the limited issue of the state of mind of the defendant and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe, as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose.
But there is no...
Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed the act or acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose
Are you
of
going to
how
put this curative instruction in front of Higgins too? Because you need it.
it goes to the defendant's state of mind, the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe, as it may go to motive. And just for the records, my findings are the same that I made at sidebar previously. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Thanks. Now, with regard to, at some point, your sister comes out to the pool area where you were, is that right?
Correct.
And do you know where Mr. O'Keefe was at that point?
I do not know.
And when your sister comes out to the pool area, what happened?
She said,
Yeah, that's sustained. I thought you were doing something else.
When your sister comes out to the pool area, how would you describe her demeanor when she comes out?
No, I'll allow that.
she was frustrated.
And at some point, did you have a conversation, without regard to what the conversation was, at some point, did you have a conversation with her about something that had just happened?
Yes.
Now, following that conversation with your sister, at some point subsequent to that, did Mr. O'Keefe come back out to the pool area?
After I spoke with her, yes, he came out to the pool area.
And you know about how long a period of time it was between the time that your sister came out to the pool area and Mr. O'Keefe came out to the pool area?
I mean, I would say approximately 20 minutes, but I don't really know exact timing.
Now, when Mr. O'Keefe came back out, did you have any conversation with him?
I did.
And can you describe that conversation?
All right, is this the instruction that you were talking about instead of the other one? All right, so jurors, I have another instruction for you. So you're about to hear evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe. Is that accurate now, Mr. Lally?
Yes.
All right. These statements are being admitted only for a limited purpose of establishing John O'Keefe's state of mind. You're not to consider this testimony as proof that the defendant has a bad character or propensity to commit crimes. The testimony of witnesses recounting conversations with Mr. O'Keefe can only be used as they go to the defendant's motive or intent on January 28th or 29th, and only if you find that the defendant was aware of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind at the time of the crime and would be likely to respond to it. There need not be direct evidence that the defendant learned of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind, so long as you reasonably can infer from the evidence that she did learn of it. Okay, Mr. Lally.
Subject to our objection.
Yes. Yep.
So, Ms. Sullivan, if I could take you back. So Mr. O'Keefe comes out, you have a conversation with him. Can you describe to the jury what that conversation was like?
I turned around and I was pretty shocked to see him. I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Did Etta and Karen have words?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, that's not what Etta said." And I asked him if everything was okay. And at that time, his phone was lighting up, and it looked like calls and texts, and it said Karen on his phone.
After you make that observation, what did you say to John?
That is just
I
so
asked him if he
bad.
needed to take it, and he said, "Yes, she's crazy. I got to take care of this."
Okay,
Was that the
so
last time that you saw him on New Year's Eve?
It is.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, New Year's Day, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed at all on that day?
I did not. I saw the children, but we didn't see them that day. No.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, being January 2nd, what was sort of the plan as far as what was going on that day?
Our hotel has a private island. The hotel we stay at has a private island, and we rented all 8 of the cabanas between the 60 of us that were there. And when the cabanas went on sale, I had reached out to John and asked him if he wanted me to get him one. And he said, sure. So I booked one for him, and he paid me for that cabana. So we all went out that morning. And it was probably around 10 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't there yet. And so I sent him a text and I said, are you coming, or do you want me to sell this cabana? Because there was other, couples there. At least he could have made, the money back. And he asked me who was there. And I said, everybody. And I named off a couple names. I'm not really sure, but I said, everybody's here.
And when you said that, how did Mr. O'Keefe respond?
He said, well, apparently I made out with your sister the other night, according to Karen.
Now, is that the first time that you had heard that?
Yes.
So fair to say whatever you had heard from your sister on December 31st was not that.
Objection.
No, I'll allow that.
Correct.
And what was your reaction when Mr. O'Keefe told you this?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I was shocked. I immediately found my sister and said, did you make out with John?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, when you went to talk to your sister, who was it that your sister was with when you went to talk to her about that?
I don't recall who was standing near her. Maybe my mom. I don't know.
As far as your sister was concerned, at that time, was she dating someone?
Yes,
And the person that she was dating, was that person on the trip as well?
he was. Yes,
And was that person that she was dating was on the trip as well? Were they at the commanders on that day that you?
they were. Yes.
Now, as far as you have some conversation in regard to your sister, and then at some point you go back and have further conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
Yeah, I said I texted him back. I said I just talked to Etta. She said absolutely not. That did not happen.
Objection. Move to strike.
That's sustained. I'll strike that.
absolutely not is an
Now, At
absolutely
some point
lie.
after that exchange, did Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed and or the kids come out to the cabana area?
They did. Yes.
And at any point, how would you describe sort of how Mr. O'Keefe and or Ms. Reed was acting when they came out to the cabana?
But Karen immediately went in the water. I just recall her being like floating in the ocean for a good chunk of the day. John was hopping around from the different cabanas talking to people. One of my favorite pictures of him is with my son from that day.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe once he came out to the cabana area?
No, we kind of just kept it light. We didn't really talk about anything that had happened. I was just kind of trying to stay out of it for now.
And following sort of the cabana situation or the cabana day, what happened then?
So post that day, I think I saw John one other time. I saw him in the pool. It was the one time that him and I were alone. He didn't seem like he was himself.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
He seemed distant, and I asked him if he was okay. And he kind of just, shrugged it off. And I said, are you happy? And he kind of, just rolled his eyes and shrugged it off. I said, well, something along the lines of life is too short to not be happy. And he goes, well, Laura, it is what it is. And I did ask him if he wanted to talk about it. I said, do you want to talk about it? And he's like, not really.
And so following that exchange?
He was just mad in the
When
moment.
was the next time that you saw them?
I'd spoken to him. We all went on the Jolly Pirate. We had all bought tickets in advance, so we had basically rented the whole boat for everybody to go. Had bought 4 tickets, and we had gotten a bus from our hotel, and he didn't show up for the bus and wasn't answering my calls or my texts. And then we finally got down to where the boat was. The boat was about to leave, and he messaged me. He's like, "Not going to make it. Kid slept late." And so I didn't think anything of it. Then after that, I saw him and Karen the night before they left. They ended up leaving a day or two early so that the kids could get back to school.
And when you saw them, where was that in relation to?
Right outside the hotel is a marketplace that has a bunch of restaurants and arcade. I was sitting at the 5 o'clock somewhere bar that looks into the arcade with my best friend Val, and my friends Dave and Laura and Karen and John walked up.
What, if any, conversation did you have with either Mr. O'Keefe or the defendant at that time?
Karen grabbed me and she said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I thought I saw something that I didn't, and I would like to pay for some of your sister's room."
And how did you respond to that?
I said, "It's absolutely not necessary. Just an apology will do."
And did she persist in wanting to pay for the room?
She did.
And how so?
She just said,
See, how bad is that? How bad is that? Where does that go to motive? Where does that go to motive? If anything, it shows how much of a stand-up person she is to say, "Hey, maybe I effed up. Maybe I effed up. Can I please let me make it right somehow?"
I will apologize, but something along the lines of, I want to pay for some of her room. Can I just have her room number? I don't remember if I gave her the room number or not. I don't really know.
Karen's obviously a
And
giver.
with regard to that trip, when was the next time, or when was the last time that you saw it?
So the day that they were leaving, I saw him by the pool. He came up, he gave me a big hug. He said, "I love you. This was a great trip. Thank you so much." And I said, "Well, you're definitely in again for next year." And he said, "Absolutely." And that was the last time I physically saw him.
And so that conversation, just turning back for a moment, as far as with regard to this read, do you know what day that would have been, as far as in relation to when they were leaving? Early January, Thursday?
I want to say it was the 5th. I want to say it was January 5th.
Now, after Ruben, did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe after that?
I talked to him via text a couple times about a couple different things, but one of them was, as I mentioned, we start planning a year in advance. And I said, "Rooms are coming available. Are you in?" And he said, let me recover from this trip first."
Now, ma'am, if I could turn your attention to Saturday, January 29th, 2022. Do you recall that day?
I do.
And at some point that morning or during that day, did you get a call?
I did. I received a call from,
I'll hear that she received a call from someone.
I received a call from my aunt
And what did you learn in the call from your aunt?
Okay.
Oh, wow.
that John O'Keefe had passed away.
And after you hung up the phone with your aunt, what did you do with that?
It is subject to striking.
I called him. I called anybody's number that I had associated with the family. I ended up calling Kaylee. I texted Kaylee. I texted Karen.
And without any regard to what Kaylee said, did Kaylee respond to you via text?
She did.
And at some point, the defendant, Ms. Reed, respond to you as well?
She did.
Was that a phone call or a text, or how did she respond?
It was a text later that afternoon.
And do you recall what she said in the text that you got?
She said, "Hi, Laura. John has passed." And I
recall what, if anything, you responded to that?
I said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And she said, "We found him in the snow at 5 a.m.
And what, if anything,
Oh,
did you
that's
ask
so
her?
bad.
I said, "What happened?" I just recall, kind of going into a tailspin, asking a bunch of questions. And she mentioned, she said, "I don't know. We were both at the same party. I didn't go in. I went home."
So that's nothing bad.
Can I have a moment?
Yes.
He didn't go in. Keyword, didn't go in. That means that he went in.
Thank you. I have nothing further for this week. Thank you.
Good afternoon, so
Good afternoon.
you were not present at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
You were not present at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022.
It's not.
Yet you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor, the state police trooper, visited you at your home all the way in Pembroke, Massachusetts on February 8th of 2022
Yes.
to interview you?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything, Mr. Nally?
Just briefly, as far as Trooper Proctor coming to your house, was he alone, or who, if anyone else, was he with when he
He
came?
was with another trooper,
Okay. Do you recall who that trooper was?
Trooper Fanning.
Nothing further on.
Good old Fanning.
Your next witness, Mr. Nally?
Yes, Your Honor. We'll call Miss Marietta Sullivan.
Counsel, I'll see you while we're waiting for this witness.
Hurry it up. Next is the sister from another mister. Just kidding, it's just a sister.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Pretty.
Sure. My name is Marietta Sullivan. Last name is Sullivan.
And where do you live then?
Right now I live in Plymouth
And how long have you lived in Plymouth?
since July of the past summer, so not even a year yet.
And do you work there?
I do.
And what do you do?
I'm a director at a memory care community.
How long have you been doing it?
Just over a year.
Now, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you
I have two,
have? Older, younger?
both older,
And brother, sister?
brother and sister.
And your sister, what is her?
Laura Sullivan.
And what is sort of the age difference between yourself and your sister?
We are 10 years apart.
Now, if I could turn your attention to New Year's, specifically 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where it was that you were or where you were going for that time?
Yes, sir. We were going to Aruba for a family trip.
And is that sort of an annual family trip?
It has become since then. It was the first time I had attended.
And do you recall sort of the time frame on that trip as far as when you were leaving, when you were coming back?
Yeah. So we left on Friday the 31st and we returned the next week, Friday the 7th.
And when you say we, who is we?
My mother and I flew out together with another group of people to meet my sister and brother-in-law down in Aruba.
And at that time, so to meet them down there, had your sister Laura, had she flown down prior to you?
She had, yes.
And at that particular time, were you dating someone?
I was seeing somebody, yes.
And the person that you were seeing, was that person coming on the trip as well?
He was, yeah, the day after we got there.
So your sister arrives on the 30th, you arrive on the 31st, and the person you were seeing arrives on the 1st.
Yes.
Now, when you arrived there, do you know about how many people were on this trip?
I would say over 30, upwards of, I would say over 30 is the best estimate I could give you.
And as far as this trip was concerned, do you recall where you stayed?
Yep, we stayed at the Renaissance Aruba.
Is that someone that you stayed on this occasion as well, subsequent occasion?
Yes.
And on the 31st, when you and your mother arrived, do you recall about what time of day it was that you got there?
So our flight landed around 3:30-ish. I would say we weren't at the hotel much later than that.
And with regard to the hotel has a lobby area. Is that
Yes, sir.
Can you describe to the jury sort of what does that layout look like? What does the lobby look like?
Sure. So right when you walk in the front doors, right in front of you is the check-in desks, 3 or 4 of them in front of you. To the left of you, when you come in, is a hallway to one side of the hotel. To the right of you is a bank of elevators that leads to another hallway that leads to the other first floor side of the hotel. You're in a big lobby, and then directly across from where the elevators are is the entrance to the pool area.
And when you arrived there at some point in time on the late afternoon of the 31st, you obviously checked in your room, and then following that, where do you go?
So we checked into our room, and then happy hour was starting around 4:30. So we met everybody down at the pool for that time.
Is there a bar in that area of the pool?
Yes, pool bar.
And so when you get down to the pool bar area, who, if anyone specifically, did you see or did you run into?
So first ran into my sister, gave her a hug, the rest of the kids and my brother. As soon as I got into the pool, I ran into Johnny and a couple of our other friends that were sitting at the pool bar down there.
And with reference to who you referred to as Johnny, what's his last name?
Johnokeefe.
And that was someone that you knew at the time, is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you know this?
He was a very, very dear family friend. He was very close to my sister, subsequently became very close to me and my family as a result. And he was my nephew's godfather.
And fair to say that you had known him for some substantial period of time?
Yeah, since Ben's father unfortunately passed away.
So at this point in time, when we're talking about turning from 2021 to 2022, how long had you known Mr. O'Keefe at that?
Oh man, probably about 8-9 years. That's as long as my nephew's been alive.
And when is it that you would see, or how often would you see Mr. O'Keefe?
Family parties, any family party that we threw, kids' birthday parties, and my sister's Christmas party that she would throw every year.
And how would you describe sort of the nature of your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
He was similar to a big brother to me. He was somebody who was there for my sister during her darkest times. So I really respected him for that. But yeah, he was a big brother and a family friend.
Now, when you saw Mr. O'Keefe at the pool bar after you arrived there, what if any conversation did you have with him, or what if anything were the two of you doing around that?
So I went up to him in the pool. He had his Alabama hat on. He expressed to me that he was excited to watch the Alabama football game at the pool bar. Given the circumstances, we were in a beautiful tropical place, and he got to watch his favorite college team play football. And he said that's all he really wanted to do for the day, was be able to watch that game.
Now, at this point in time that you're talking to Mr. O'Keefe, were you aware of him dating anybody? Had you met anybody that he was dating at that time?
I had not met the person that he was dating. I had heard about her through family friends and other people that were on the trip.
So as far as the other sort of family events that you would see Mr. O'Keefe at, Ms. Reed or his girlfriend at that time wasn't there with him?
No.
So after the time that you spent at the pool bar that afternoon, do you recall what else you did that evening?
Yep. So most of us in the group had dinner reservations. I believe they were around 7 p.m. and we were all getting ready to leave the pool bar to get picked up around 6:30.
And as far as a fairly large group that went out to dinner that night?
Yeah, most of us.
And was Mr. O'Keefe part of that group that went out to dinner?
He was not.
Do you recall about what time it was that you got back to or returned to the hotel?
Most of us got back a little after 9. Taxis were kind of crazy to get, so a little after 9.
And when you got back to the hotel, where did you go?
I went upstairs to check on my mom. She had gone in a bank of taxis before me, so I went upstairs to make sure that she was up there and safe and in the room.
And so his mother at some point, did you come back?
I did.
And when you came back down, by down, and you recall where you were staying in the hotel?
Yep. So we were on the 4th floor, and then I took it back down to the lobby.
And at that point in time, when you're getting back from dinner and going up to the room and coming back down, were you aware of where Mr. O'Keefe and his niece and nephew were staying?
Yeah, I knew where they were staying. Yes, room-wise. Yep.
And where was that in relation to the lobby?
1st floor.
So the lobby's on the 1st floor, their rooms are on the 1st floor?
Yes.
So when the elevator gets down to the lobby level, you get out, is that correct?
Mhm.
And what if
So you have to say, okay.
you just have to answer yes.
Yes, sorry.
So the elevator gets down to the lobby, you walk out, with anyone you see when you come out?
So when the elevator opens up, the first person I saw was the attendant standing behind the desk. I didn't see anybody else in the lobby with me until I stepped out. When I stepped out, I looked to my left and I saw Johnny coming in through the first set of outside doors.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, was there any other sort of term that you would use to refer to him?
Johnny or Godfather.
Your Honor, I think this may be appropriate.
All right. So folks, I'm going to say again, that first instruction I gave you with the last witness, that you're about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by the defendant. Ms. Reed is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictment. So this witness's testimony may not and must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she may have a propensity to commit the crimes with which she's been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts that you'll hear about as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here. But you may consider the act solely on the limited issue of the defendant's state of mind and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed these acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's been charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, motive, and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe. And for the same findings that I made at sidebar. Yes.
So you walk out of the elevator, you're by yourself, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you see Mr. O'Keefe. Did you see where Mr. O'Keefe was in relation to the lobby or where he was coming from?
He was coming from the outside doors into the lobby.
Is that where the pool bar is located?
Opposite side. Yes.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, do you see with him initially?
Nobody with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing or how was he acting sort of when he came?
So he sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" But yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
And did you go over to him at that point?
I did. I went up to him and I gave him a hug.
And what happened then?
I pulled back. He was glassy-eyed, looking above me. We never made eye contact. He was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, "Where are you going?" assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet us. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a bank of rooms to our right. And I said, "Well, you should go that way." And I stepped back and I guided him toward the area that he was going.
Now, as far as the bank of rooms to the right, you indicated that you were familiar or aware of where Mr. O'Keefe was and where the children were. Is that correct?
I know they were on the 1st floor. I'm not 100% positive as to where exactly their rooms were.
And if you know, did you know whether or not that Mr. O'Keefe was staying in the same room as Patrick and Kaylee at that point?
I didn't know if they were staying in the same room or not, no.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar when I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister."
And what happened then?
When I came back around the corner, I said, after Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go fuck myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," and walked away.
And just to be clear, when you say Ms. Reed, this is someone that you became familiar with as it went along?
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. I just had seen her sitting by the side of the pool when I had been talking to Johnny earlier in the day.
And the person you know to be Ms. Reed, do you see her in the photo today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or what article of clothing that she's wearing?
Sure, she's in a black and white checkered blazer. She's 2 people in from you.
As far as the defendants beyond the yelling, what, if anything, did you observe as far as her demeanor or how she was acting at the time that this interaction was going on?
She was just very loud. She very, energetically screamed for me to go fuck myself. She was waving her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down. And after I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," I went out to the pool bar, so I didn't see much after that.
And could you hear anything as far as when you were walking out to the pool bar, as far as any other conversation between the defendant and Ms. Rose?
Not after that first time, no.
You go back to, or you go out to the pool bar, and who, if anyone, did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
I'll allow this part.
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, "John O'Keefe's girlfriend?" And she looked at me and said, "Karen?" And I said, "Yeah, you guys like her?" She said, "Yeah, she's okay." And I said, "Well, she sucks."
Now, following that, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
Which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
I'll see you at sidebar quickly.
Well, dum dum dum. Anyways, that was that was an uneventful day. So yeah, this is why she got charged with second degree. Is because of that whole Aruba trip with the sisters, thinking that John kissed another girl. It's supposed to go to her frame of mind or whatever motive, and basically they were just trying to bash Karen. That's my opinion. But yeah, so anyways, tomorrow, day 17, will be Brian Higgins, the guy that Karen was texting after this whole fiasco. Yeah. It's great fun. Anyways. All right. So I will be here tomorrow. And like I end it every time, let the ones that you love and care about know that you love and care about them, because tomorrow's never promised. And make sure that you keep your circle small, because this could be you, could be me, could be anybody. Anyways, all right, thank you so much and have a blessed night.